Right, good evening everybody. I'm going to start actually. We're waiting for one other member. Actually, what I'd like to do this evening, we have a couple of members of the public in. Now, I think some of you will recognise one of the members of the public without singling that person out. But what I'd like to, I think it'd be very helpful and polite, particularly as from our roles, if we could all very, very quickly just introduce ourselves before we start the agenda, and that will really help the members of the public. Can I start down here, Councillor Howard? Just very quickly, Councillor, name, ward, and any other roles you have, please.
Okay, my name's Councillor Wayne Howard. I'm from Hill Ward, and I'm a portfolio holder for Access and Communications, and I'm not part of this group. I'm just here to listen to what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Councillor Amy Howard for Drayton Ward. I'm not part of this group, I'm just representing today.
Barry Frenchman, I'm Councillor for Scrutiny Ward. I'm actually part of this committee.
I'm Ian Robertson, Councillor Ian Robertson, for Barley and Kilsbury Ward, which includes Crick and one of the other villages. And I'm also a member of this commission.
Evening, my name's Councillor Jason Pritchard. My ward is Braunston and Bolton, and I'm part of this committee.
I'm Simon Bowles, I'm the Council's Business Manager.
Councillor Colin Morgan, I'm the chairman of this committee. I'm a member for Abbey South, which covers the town. Do you mind if you just keep going round? And we'll stop at you, don't worry, I won't embarrass you, but I think it'll help you. It's polite to do this as a member of the public, okay? Don't know, if there's hundreds who wouldn't do this, but I think it's quite good.
I'm Wendy Craven and I'm committee clerk for Daventry Council.
Steve Osborne from Longbuckby, town chairman, and not part of this committee.
I was the Abbey South, the Party Committee.
Thank you. You can introduce yourself, you don't.
I'm Sue Heston. We want to see what you do, how you do it, and why you do it.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, no requirement for anybody to actually do that outside of the group. So thank you very much, everybody. So you'll see here there's councillors that are on the committee and councillors that have come along for other purposes. The meeting is open to any member of council or any member of the public. So thank you for joining us. So with that, we'll go on to the actual formal agenda for this evening. This evening's meeting. So here we are already. So first item on the agenda is to sign the minutes of the meeting from the 7th of June. The only thing I'd like to point out here is the item SI.22/16 lead with the Councillor Chris Miller. I'm sure you'll enjoy the quote, "as a man who makes things happen." For those of you that weren't there at the meeting, we had a very informed meeting from Mr. Miller, the leader. We asked him to outline two issues: one, how vision is formulated from the district council, and the role of the leader. And he spent about an hour going through this with us comprehensively, and we had a very good opportunity to ask questions. Thank you very much. Members of the public, please feel free to take a seat if you like down at the bottom. Thank you. So another member of the public. So with that, I have no other comments. Does anybody have any comments? Or are you happy to sign these as a true and accurate record of the meeting? Agreed. Thank you. Item number 2, apologies for absence. I haven't received any. We haven't received any. We are expecting Councillor Brown because he has got an item on the agenda this evening. So I'm hoping he's simply running late and never delayed. It's out of character for Councillor Brown to not turn up, so I'm expecting maybe late. Third item on the agenda is declaration of members' interests. As always, Scrutiny and Improvement Committee, this is non-political. We're here to look at issues and challenge and discuss those and explore those. But other than that, does anybody have any members' interests that relate to items on the agenda this evening? Not okay. Of course, you can always raise them again before if you, as the conversation proceeds, if anything occurs to anybody. At this point on nearly every agenda, we have the corporate strategic plan. This is basically where we review performance of key areas, and up until the last meeting, we had these presented to us on very big sheets. And we decided at the last meeting to experiment with having them electronically. And the benefit of that is actually interestingly exemplified today is if members of the public come along, they can also see the information rather than us producing packs for everybody. And also for members who simply turn up and haven't got the information. Now here's the real challenge for us, can we make it big enough on the screen and illuminate enough? Now, to present this section is Simon Bowers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And to give you a quick overview, the objective for us to have this particular item on the agenda is we review performance of the key performance indicators for the District Council. It gives members, anybody present apart from members of the public can ask questions about them. And we have an officer talk to us through particularly those that are on red, and we have a status system red, amber and green. The basis of the information can be used by Scrutiny Improvement to actually enable us to have a look at areas that need performance evaluation, which is what the basis of Scrutiny is all about. So, thank you, Simon, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can do two things first. I appreciate it being formally to do it, but I think it'd be polite to give apologies on behalf of Julie Lewis, who's recovering from an operation, so she's not here today, but I'm covering for her and returning. And my second observation, having opened this file, is I think if we're going to do this regularly, we're going to reformat it so we can flow down with a legible measure and then a legible chart for you. But we'll make it work this way for this evening. So first measure, which you're all familiar with, Commercial Floor Space and Planning Commission, B1.1, has not changed recently, has it? First quarter. Okay, so the target's been reduced at the start of the year because there was no chance of meeting it, and then it rises again later in the year, so currently green.
Okay, so on this one, anybody's welcome to ask any questions about any particular performance objective. Simply, if you want to ask a question, pop your hand up. If I don't see any hands, we'll move on to the next item. Each one has got its own individual clause, if you like, item number on the schedule. This, by the way, is most interesting once you get to the first half. Obviously, this only performs on the first quarter, and it's always historical data by a short period. So if nobody has any particular questions on that one, Simon, I think you're lucky on this one. You can move to the next one.
That's fine. The next one is also green. So they don't comment, just to confirm which one it is. This is the Town Centre Retail and Leisure Floor Space Planning Commission B1.2.
Okay, so this one is also green. Any questions? Any updates required? No? Okay, thank you. Next one.
Then on percentage of floor space occupied, B1.3, this is the commercials, council's commercial properties, which is currently very green.
So that's above target in actual fact.
It is.
So it's tracking. So it finished the because this is on a quarter by quarter basis. It's not cumulative. This was 96% at the end of the final quarter in the previous year, and it's still retained 96%. Very good. Anybody any questions? In that case, I'll do it by exception. We'll keep going. If anybody has any questions, pop your hand up.
We're now on B2.1, number of apprenticeships, work placements and training posts offered by the council, which is also ahead of target.
Very good, thank you. Next one. This gives you, for people who don't normally come to the meet, you get a totally different experience actually when it's in this format. Discover what you want to do.
And then we're now on B2.2, number of new school and college places, delivered in accordance with demand. And here we are green, we anticipate a further delivery spaces towards the end of the year, which should remain green.
Okay, and the quarter four there, Simon, that's 1,450 by the end of the year.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah, and for people who perhaps aren't familiar, could you explain what that is?
That reflects the Hill School, Daventry, and the proposed Muxborough Primary School coming online.
Thank you. And will the Muxborough come on stream by the end of that period, will it?
Let me think about this. Fourth quarter. Probably not, actually, so that might go around at the end of the year.
Right.
Because we're having some difficulties getting hold of the site to build it on, which is...
So we've got 850, some of those will be fulfilled by Hill and the rest will be next one.
Yeah, so probably for the following year.
Councillor Wesley.
Could you just clarify the last point about the difficulty finding a site in the school?
It's not about finding the site. The site is defined pretty well, and we have planning permission for it on that site. It's a question of the developer of the Monksmoor estate presenting that site to us in a state that is fit to build a school on. They have to construct a substantial depth of plateau. At the moment, they are not commissioning their work to do that, whilst they are in discussion with the council about the viability of the phase 3 housing scheme. The site is divided into 5 phases for housing purposes. They say phase 3 isn't viable with the current affordable housing mix, and until that issue is resolved, they do not intend to commit the finance to build that plateau, which will enable us to build the school on it.
What might the impact of that be on this number? When would we expect the defer? How many places are Monksmoor School on this plan?
Monksmoor School is 1.5 forms of entry, which is 315 places.
315 places. So when would they be expected on the current timeline?
Currently, we are just on the cusp. I think possibly beyond the cusp now of delivering them September 17. Which was the target set prior to that.
Because the consequence of that is September 2017, for that form entry, people will be applying this autumn, won't they, for those spaces?
Exactly so, which is why the County Council at current date is not showing the school on the forms for applications.
Okay, any further questions on that, anybody? Councillor Wainhood.
Just, sorry for the question, but why, no way can we enforce Crest to bring this forward, because it means we're now behind targets. The message we're selling to people coming into the district for schools, obviously we can't achieve this again as we're Middlemore.
We have tried most of the things that we can try to persuade them, including pointing out it is in their own self-interest, because people buying houses on that estate will want to know that they can have a small place in the locality. Clearly, Crest are a commercial concern. They take the view that they don't know when they will deliver phase 3 until they resolve the viability issue, therefore they don't want to put money in. And if one is sympathetic to them, since the referendum, their share price has taken a calamitous fall, which suggests that the investment public, perhaps not that convinced that Crest has such a viable business model post-referendum. So there are some external factors as well as some internal factors that are affecting that. Having said which, we are exploring and continue to explore options. The leader has been involved to some degree as well, and we're not giving up. We'll keep on pressing. And I've made it very clear to Crest that as soon as they give us a site, we will get on and build the school whenever that is.
Thank you. Is there any further questions on this topic? No, I'm sure this one will come back to you. Thank you, Simon. Next one, please. So on that one, I think we can identify a risk of that not being achieved before the year end because of the circumstance you described.
Indeed, sir.
Thank you. Next one, please.
We are now on B3.1. Media coverage of Daventry District. Number of items of positive media coverage. Obviously, last year we had an exceptional year, mainly due to the dog control order proposals. This year we are on target, but not the exceptional performance of last year.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, roll on, please.
This B3.2, major planning applications determined within the statutory time limit or agreed time limit otherwise. And here we are comfortably ahead of the financial target to trigger intervention by the government.
Very good. Any comments or questions? So much quieter. So much quieter than usual in this. Maybe it's the first quarter. Or maybe it's because Councillor Randall's not here. Okay, next one, please. Or Councillor Paul, actually. Yeah, good point. Yeah. Councillor Paul and Councillor Randall have given us about 20 questions by now, actually.
Okay, we're now to the environment priority. So this is the 1.1 about carbon dioxide emitted as a result of the council's operations. As you can see, we are currently green, and that will then persist throughout the year because it's an annual measure.
So, let me be clear. The target is we must have less than 2036. That's tonnes, isn't it?
Yes.
But actually, we're below that because the figure's lower.
Yeah.
But we actually finished last year beyond target. Councillor Robertson.
I just wanted to ask if we know why we're on target. In other words, what have we done to achieve this dramatic fall?
Can you go back to the narrative, please, Simon?
Yes, sir.
Just
The council's taken a whole series of measures over the years. The biggest single source of CO2 are the leisure centre, which is, I think, remembering about a quarter of our CO2, and environmental services, principally the dust carts and the other vehicles, because of the diesel return, which I think makes up something over half on recollection. So obviously we're critically dependent on how well Amy perform in terms of their part of the measure, and as the population grows, it becomes more difficult for them to keep the figure down clearly. They have to drive more miles to serve more properties.
Is that the type of heating they use, presumably? The leisure centre?
The leisure centre is principally space heating and water heating. The leisure centre's done very good work, actually. They have adjusted all kinds of equipment. The lights have now gone to LEDs in the sports hall. So the leisure centre is producing quite a lot less CO2. They're ahead of their contractual target, as indeed are EMS, Enterprise or Amy.
To pick up on that point, actually, I mean, if you're an organisation, company, you may actually express this as a ratio anyway. So CO2 emissions per X sale or per widget produced.
Yes.
So actually, to answer that question, you could say we could have it as per head of population, and that way it might keep you more realistic, particularly if it increases because of overall.
We could. It's quite difficult because the district council isn't a manufacturer of widgets where you can divide everything by a widget. We do a very large number of services, some of which are affected by population, and some of which aren't in the same way.
Some of us might express a per household. I don't want to get into making it overcomplicated today, but that's things to consider, I think, anyway.
Well, there is a new corporate plan obviously going to be developed during this year. And members, I'm sure, will want to input into that process, and thoughts like that will be gratefully received.
Thank you. It's amazing, isn't it? It's the one with the longest description so far. Councillor Pritchard, you have a question?
Can we just scroll over back to those figures, if you don't mind? I mean, within this quarter, in the yellow, Q1 to 4, presumably is last financial year?
Yes, in fact it's almost a year before, because the reporting is done in July each year for...
I'm just a bit confused why the year before that there was a higher CO2 limit than a lower, but then we've got a 25% increase to play with in terms of a target. That's my understanding. What are the criteria that set that 25% increase?
Because it looks like the target's gone up.
It does indeed. I'm pretty confident, but I will check, and I'll perhaps drop an email back to the committee if I may.
Please, yeah.
I'm pretty confident that's a result of rebaselining. The conversion factors that change our activity into the calculated level of CO2 have been changed by what was the Department of Energy and Climate Change, and is now the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, which mean that we appear to be generating more, where our activities are the same, effectively, and so you need to adjust both target and actual to match that. But I will confirm that, and I'll probably go back to the chair.
It's a good question, actually, and it's very interesting, carbon, because it's not what you think it is in terms of you could emit the same number of molecules, but the factor's different because the way the energy is produced and the way they put weight in it. Having said that, though, Councillor Pritchard's point is it still went down and then it's gone back up again. Well, so to follow that logic, because
we had a gradually reducing target. You can't see it because it's not set, but it did reduce over quite a number of years, just stepped down year on year in line with the carbon management plan. I'm pretty confident that step up is due to the rebaselining, but we'll check.
Could you come back to us on that one, Simon?
Yes,
next meeting, please. Wendy, could you make a note of that? Thank you. Very good. For other members who aren't familiar with this, what we did a couple of years ago, we actually requested for these to be tracked quarter on quarter, cumulatively, historically, because we were a bit concerned we couldn't look back on previous year's data. And what you've done there, Councillor Pritchard, is proved exactly how I wanted to have it in this way. And a bit later on, there is actually an item on the agenda to look at how this is presented 1 year on after post-implementation. Okay, so there is an example clearly of where Simon can come back to us with further demonstration of that. Thank you. Next one, please, Simon.
Feeling this is our old friend, domestic waste per household. This is checked. Indeed it is, yes. You know the story very well, I think, can you see?
Okay, I think this one's an interesting one. You're more than welcome to ask questions. I think the point on this one is it's not performed for years to our expectations. But as everybody will know, and even if you've seen Daventry call-ins come through the post, of course, you'll know we resolved recently to have a new approach to waste when the contract ends. Do you want to talk to this one, Simon, or
As the Chairman, I think the committee are very familiar with the practice here. As always, we have an ethic that we set the targets where they're contractual based on the contract. We haven't fiddled with them, and that means this one is permanently red because the contractor offered a figure which I think was always going to be unattainable.
Yeah, and also this is a cumulative
during the year.
Cumulative during the year. So the top figure for is the end of the year. Does anybody have any questions on this one? I think we all know where we are on this project. Be more than welcome to ask questions if you want to do so. Not members of the public, unfortunately. Not members. You could look at me as much as you like, Mr. Over. You can't ask questions.
When does the contract review take place?
No questions.
Well, I'm sorry. Well, it's important that because
you can't ask a question. You can't ask a question. I'm sorry. You only listen only mode. I'm afraid. As much as I'd like to take it, you can't ask a question.
Okay.
Next item.
E3.
No, sorry. You can't ask questions. Please be quiet. Next one.
E3.1 is about streets and environmental cleanliness, which is based on a perception measure. Now, strong suspect, yes, last year we didn't have a suitable survey conducted to land quality, so there's no data. We have actually just received this year's as of today, but I haven't had a chance to absorb it yet, so I can't give you the headline there. But certainly by the time we are here for the next meetings committee, there will be data.
Any questions? Councillor Whistler.
Yeah, just how come there was no data?
Because Enterprise did not carry out the survey in accordance with the contractual requirements. We have disciplined them over that, I'll put it like that, and they have received the maximum performance fail for that indicator as a result for that year.
Further questions?
So, does that indicator which fail mean a financial penalty, or?
It does, yes. There's a slight irony because of the way the calculations work. They've now failed for so many years that they will always be a maximum fail until the end of the contract on this one, actually, no matter how well back they do.
Thank you. I don't take any more questions on that. I think, again, if this were going to go out for many years to come, we would want to, but we know this is, in some respects, we don't need to dwell on it because we know the matter is in hand as we're looking at the contract for a new supplier. Next one, please, Simon.
This is about a public engagement measure or a community engagement measure about parish councils being involved in dog fouling reduction campaigns. And we have already comfortably met this year's target, but I understand more is planned.
Yes, Robinson.
Well, just that I wanted to say that I attended a parish council meeting last night regarding this, and no takers, quite frankly. It's too distasteful a subject for anybody to want to take it up, and I don't know what we do about that.
Well, we had a very lively conversation. When it comes up at full council, we have a very lively conversation in the church.
If I may, Chairman, it was not my service here, it's a military community team, but I'm aware from her that many parishes find it a fascinating subject and do take it up with great vigour, so I can only say it's a different characteristic in there.
And at great length.
I'm always rather surprised at Braunston, where I spend a lot of my time, and there are several patches of dog fouling. I'm always surprised in the village that there's so much of it. So can you go back to the description again, please? See if anybody else wants to ask a question about it. So there we are. It's the proportion of parish councils engaged in dog fouling reduction campaign. Percentage of the total of parishes. How come they're not all engaged in it?
Chairman, a matter of local choice.
Or because perhaps some think it's not an issue, perhaps?
Well, the way it was sort of put to us was that it was they're looking for volunteers on the parish council to take a lead on it, and nobody wanted to. It was as simple as that.
He's brought, Councillor Bronson involved for instance.
So we just have, because you made a comment there, and there is indeed a few people that are irresponsible, but I think that vigour exists with Bronson Parish Council yesterday evening. There are 2 parish councils involved. The strategy including laminating bins as well as the other remedial things about highlighting, graphically highlighting patches of excrement and things. So, but yeah, we're well on board because as a ward, sick of it really.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Daventry Gordon's got a feature on it again, I think, hasn't it? If I had a quick scan through, Councillor Wesley.
Yeah, just a point. Is it just the parish councils that are reported on this? Because as I understand it, you can actually do it just as an individual, can't you?
This measure reports parishes. One of the absolute truths of performance management is no matter what measure you come up with, someone will break it. And I think we just accept the fact there are some good things that happen that aren't captured.
Are the percentages right on this one? Can we just go back again? So I think 40% was the target, was it?
Yes, that's right.
And what level of involvement?
It says 28 out of 53, which
40%.
is
53%. 53%. Right. Any further questions on this one? It's terrible as a member of the public. I'm sure you want to ask. You're more than welcome to talk to me afterwards and raise anything for next time. Next one, please, Simon.
Okay, this is the number of green flags awarded to our parks. Target is 1, which is Daventry Country Park. I think that's a little misleading. The target really ought to flow through there. We don't target to have 0. The green flag award notification will come soon, actually, for this year.
By definition, we'll still have it until such time as we don't get away with it.
Yes.
Yeah. So technically, at this point in time, it should still be 1, and the target should still be 1. What's the benefit of this? Is it actually worth having? And if so, why is it worth having? What do we do differently as a result of having it? What are the benefits? So, I know it's not a rhetorical question, I'm asking you.
I was addressing the committee or me. I'm certainly off an answer. I mean, the green flag probably does 3 things. It acts as a sort of emblem of pride, and a sort of advertisement or a description. It provides a check against what we're doing, and it provides a focus for future improvements. Like any measure, it's not perfect, but it does provide that external verification and external challenge to the range of services provided in relation to country park.
I'll come to you. Some people tell me the country park, and even my own observation is it's not the prettiest place always. Councillor, any comments?
Yeah, I was just wondering how we got the assessment, if that's appropriate at this point. How it was. You said
how we passed, or
well, you just said it's an external.
It is, yes.
I mean, is that a physical check of people,
yes,
or is it just?
So they actually audit it?
Yeah, the Green Flag is an organisation. I forget who runs it. I think it used to be the Civic Trust, of course, I know we're around, but there is an external organisation who runs the Green Flag examinations. The assessors do come out and look at the sites, they look at the action plans and so on, and that combined assessment allows either to award or refuse to award the Green Flag. We did once lose it about 10 years ago, I think, and got it back the following year.
Interesting. Councillor? Christian?
Oh, no,
You want to make
it's just been answered. No, I just
Right, so it's
exactly the same question as you.
Would we be interested in a presentation from the appropriate officer on how this works, this process, and what the benefits are? I'm asking you, you're not on the committee this year, are you? But I'm more than welcome to take anybody's view on it. Would this be of interest? What the green flag is, yeah?
To me, yeah. I mean, presume is a payment for assessment.
There is, yes.
Do you know?
I don't think it's a vast amount.
I'm not averse to it because it's standard setting at the end of the day. If we don't have our own standards, I'm sure we'll have somewhere, but external verification. But that would be interesting to see how things are met.
How they're met and etc. Who's the portfolio order for this one? Is it Alan, Councillor Hills?
I would say it was Councillor Guildford because it's more environmental services than it is.
We'll put that down as a potential. We can come back to this a bit later on in the next steps area where we may ask a member to come and talk to us about it. You can't go wrong with that one, can you? You want one? We've got one. Hopefully we'll get rewarded it, but actually we'll talk about the process later. Councillor,
sorry, just one question. We do have other areas, we do have other parts in the street, so why is it that they're not assessed, or why don't we do that?
Yeah, why are they not in scope?
For instance, Brixworth.
Well, Brixworth we don't own or control.
Oh, right, okay.
Three, if you like, areas, perhaps they're four, depending how you count. I mean, what's a country park? A bit of a central question, but certainly we have Daventry Country Park, Bower Hill Country Park, Cracks Hill Country Park. You might say, perhaps members of the Hill Ward would have a view on this, that the Northern Valley Park and the Northern Valley Farm is a substantial area, and maybe should have that status. But Daventry Country Park has always been the focus. It's the area which attracts the largest number of people. I don't think one separate Cracks Hill actually probably overworked it, but it has the water, it has the other attractions, so Daventry has always been the focus.
Councillor Howard, you're outboard, aren't you, of course? Have you any comments on that?
It's totally different. The country park is a natural park. We've got tarmac paths and cycle tracks and trees that are not of like any standard. They're not oak or elms or of any distinction really, and the ponds or superficial. So it's a nice place to walk. That's as far as it is. Where the country park is a nice place to go and have picnics and kids to go for weekends. And, there's open air cinema, etc. So it's a totally different
ecological system, etc. Different benefits.
Until we resolve the issue with AIM, I wouldn't really want to promote that part either.
Councillor Wesley, does that answer your question?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, perhaps we'll put that on the a subsequent meeting and we can get a bit more detail on that actually. We will talk about it, but I wonder how much we really know about it and what the assessment process is, etc., and what the benefits are. Okay, good. Then our next one.
Chairman, this might be beyond what I can actually deliver, but one of the green flag assessors, I think he does area because it's too close, is the parks manager of Rugby Borough Council. He is very enthusiastic. He has been sent to America to assess the parks of the green flag. He's recognised as a leading judge. So if you're interested, we might be able to ask him to pop along and give you an explanation as to what it is from a judge's point of view.
Very good, actually. Quite frankly, Simon, if you look at some of the parks in Rugby, I think they're nicer than ours. So we could perhaps talk to him. So he's the... What is he again?
I think he's the Parks and Grounds Manager, Chris Walker.
Right, okay, thank you. Parks and Ground Manager would be.
Yeah, but we can get in touch to see if you'd be willing to.
Please. When do you have that? Thank you. Moving on, next one. Thank you.
Okay, another of these Norton 1 measures. This is about restoring historic buildings, and obviously Overson Hall has been the target. That is progressing reasonably positively, actually, while there's plenty of challenges remaining, and the target is to get that underway by the end of this year.
Okay, I think this is also communicated with Daventry Court, actually, wasn't it, as well? Any questions on this matter?
Do we have a similar measure for Weedon?
Councillor Frenchman? Yep. Do we have a similar measure for Weedon?
Yeah. At present, the measure is simply to deliver one. Now, if we were able to deliver Weedon, that would obviously count. It'll be a choice for the council about whether it feels it can influence Weedon in the same way, because Weedon is a scale larger than Overston and substantially more complicated and expensive, and whether it regards it as a sufficient priority that it wanted to put that level of resource in. And again, that's probably something sensibly thought about as part of the corporate plan setting for the forthcoming 3-year period.
And of course, if we wanted to, we could discuss putting this on the plan for the next cycle for Weedon. Should we wanted to? Okay, so thank you, Councillor Frenchman.
Simon, it just strikes me that Weedon is, as you say, a substantial site. It's actually a very important site.
Absolutely.
And by not having it on a plan, even if it's a long-term plan, I know it isn't, but it runs the risk of being overlooked. And if we've got something to work to, it does focus people's attention much more than just sidelining it.
Exactly, and entire schemes are sold on the back of these developments, aren't they? I mean, I remember before I was disappointed enough and lived on Middlemore, Women's School, I used to live in Weedham, and we were promised a development there as well as part of the development from Glaydale. So, as you'll well know, I'm sure going back. So, let's go on to, thank you, Simon, let's go on to the next one.
This is conservation area appraisals carried out, number carried out over time. We have really struggled with this one, as you can see from the performance throughout. Target was reset at the start of this year to 0.
To 0. So about our targets, are we?
Well, that's simply because we try and be realistic at the start of the year. The good news is, after much struggle, we have now managed to recruit a heritage policy officer who can actually do this work. It's been a real battle. She'll be joining us fairly soon, and then she'll be able to work through this. We will get to the 11, but it will be in the following year.
Yes, so Q2 having 1 is perhaps unrealistic, is it?
It may be, but if it is, it'll drop into what we'll deliver it in the next year.
Okay, so you may expect an orange or red on that one and a pick-up afterwards, and you have been, officers have been to this committee before and explained what this is. And obviously it's simply a recruitment problem, and actually looking out for a person to suitably qualified to do the task. Do you have any questions on this one? Okay, thank you. Next one, please. By the way, Simon, I probably should have indicated this. When Julie normally does this, she normally does it by exception, so we look at oranges and reds, but we are where we are.
And you're right, it's just actually very difficult to do that on this format. I can't really see until we get to it. E-enabled services, I think this one is green, so I follow the Chairman's instruction. We'll just
skip on, unless anybody wants to stop very quickly. That's the benefit of having it in front of you, so there's pros and cons.
Will you please excuse me? I have to go. Can I think up with you?
Thank you. So soon. If you want to come to this meeting, you need to keep yourself all night.
I realise that now.
Thank you.
Planning board, so yes. How long do you measure on for just as a matter of interest? About half an hour.
Yes.
That's what
I feel that's when we finish at 10 o'clock. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you for coming. Can I say
just want to say that Adam's not coming because he's in Scotland. He sent an email.
Righto, thank you. Much appreciated.
H1.2 about voluntary sector services, I think is also green. No, it's not, it's amber. Just slightly over target there. I believe they're confident they will get back on track.
Okay, any questions? Okay, move on to the next one, thank you.
This one is comfortably green, which is, supports and measuring contacts, and performing very well. Elderly and vulnerable residents, value of adaptation works. Currently red, basically explanation that we advertise it lots, but it is ultimately demand-led.
Ah, yes.
We've had discussions about
We've had discussions. We had this in the spotlight last year at one of our meetings. We had seen there was a high level of activity on this. It wasn't. We come to the conclusion it wasn't anything we were doing in terms of not promoting this sufficiently. Any questions on that one, anybody? No. Okay. So Councillor Frenchman's point notes that I think the activity on this one. We did. We did actually say last time that if there was a continued underperformance, we'd also re-scrutinise it. But I think at the time we were suitably satisfied that a lot of activity had been done on it in terms of outreach. And it's probably not one for our main gaze at the moment.
Okay, community safety activities, comfortably, reasonably good in terms.
Very good.
number of new homes to deliver housing growth. We were green last year, and we expect to be green again this year.
Will we be green, Simon, if the Monksmoor phase, the third phase, doesn't go ahead? Will that have an impact on that?
That, I think, is unlikely to have much effect this year.
So it'll probably have an effect towards the basically. So after April next year, that would probably
it might. I mean, I don't for a second, Chairman, believe that Monksmoor's phase 3 won't be delivered, but there is a tussle going on about the percentage of affordable housing on it.
Right. Okay. So any other issues that might cause this to miss our targets at this point in time that we know of?
There's a range of risky areas. At the moment, the Housing Implementation Strategy quarterly review identifies a number of sites as amber. The rest is green, no red at present. So there are a number of areas of risk, but as things stand, we should continue to deliver the 5-year housing plan supply.
And what is the root cause of that? Is there a common cause? I mean, for instance, is it kind of Brexit concerns or something like this, or?
The sites which are on amber typically are the larger sites. They involve greater investment up front for a developer before they can start delivering at a sensible rate. And in some cases, there may also be a question of developers not wanting to release sites too quickly because they force the house prices down, which doesn't suit them. Brexit might be affecting some of the bigger sites in particular, because obviously you're making bigger investment decisions, and while the house builders are uncertain, they may hold back for a little while. But at the end of the day, their business consists of building and filling houses, so I think they will press on.
Any questions, anybody? Okay, in that case, we'll press on to it. Thank you, next one.
This is the affordable housing delivery measure, which, as you know, we didn't meet last year. We have recalibrated the target this year to reflect more precisely what the core strategy requires each year, which is why it's lower. And we'll get the data fairly soon. As things stand, based on quarterly monitoring, we believe we will just make it.
Questions? Okay, very good. Court 2 always gets a bit more excited, I find. Yeah.
This is council tax collection.
We can skip that one. It's on green.
Yep. And then likewise, I think that's not nasty rate collection. That is commercial property income, which ties with the fact it's very highly net above target. And this is no value for money criteria, which again was met last time it was assessed, and we expect to meet it again.
Thank you. This one's above target.
It is indeed, which is the sustainable. There's the amount of reserves we've got at the end of the time period, and the IIP one that is on target. Yeah. Expect to maintain the silver accreditation.
Okay, we'll keep moving.
Customer satisfaction level.
This one's always interesting to us.
I think it's such a review recently, wasn't it? Most recent quarter, 90% against a target of 85.
Any questions on this one? Can we have a look at the metric?
How do we assess that data?
Councillor Robinson.
How do we assess the data? Measured quarterly.
Well, we did some work on this one. Thank you for putting your hand up. Councillor Frenchman.
Sorry, if you can go back to the figures, Simon, please. It seems to be constantly going down. There's a trend, isn't there?
Because this time last year it was 100%, now it's down to 90%.
There is, I believe the sample size is larger, because we're partly reflecting work this committee has done.
It is.
Whether that's giving us a more solid set of data. The problem is, of course, if you have 100%, to some degree it's going to be a statistical fluke, and you cannot improve on it.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson, this is a very interesting one because Councillor Wesley did a piece of work on this, and it went through council. We'd increase the sample size. We were concerned the sample size was too low, and this might be some of the effects that we were looking for, actually, because we thought the small sample size was distorting flattering the figures, basically. So it's very interesting to see how this one develops over time. The fact that it's quite low is quite notable, lower. Councillor Wesley.
Yeah, just to answer that. When we started looking at it, the officers actually started to change actually increased the numbers anyway before we'd during the piece of work. So I can't want to remember, but it was
yeah.
I can't remember the numbers. It's not hundreds and hundreds though, but it did increase quite substantially, and the methodologies changed slightly as well. So, and I think we were probably right to look at it because it does actually, you can actually say better reflection.
I guess it's too early to tell at the moment, but there is a decrease in there, and we'll keep a watching brief on how that changes over time. Simon, can you go back to the figures, the beginning of the tracking of the figures, please? Yeah, I mean, so actually that's interesting because, I mean, it's not much percentage point difference, but it is the lowest since we started tracking at the beginning of 2014. So that'll be quite interesting to see observe on that one continues over time. Any question? Councillor Pritchard first, then Councillor Pritchard.
Just at our next meeting, we can have those figures about sample sizes, how much they've been increased. That'd be useful, actually.
Yeah, agreed. When we can put that, so we get the officer to bring back the figures on that one in more detail. Thank you. And we will also have another quarter's figures there. Councillor Frenchman?
Do we do anything to capture the data of why 10% are unhappy? And what we're doing to make them happy?
Yeah,
now there'll always be some unhappy people because they're just angry at something that's gone against them.
Yeah.
But there must be within that people who are genuine, are upset. But there's no information that I've seen on that.
Correct. Councillor West, did you recall this in your
I think, I mean, the survey basically asked people what they thought of it, and then if there are variances on that, then I think there is officer contact with those people to try and rectify
so
it.
some follow-ups.
And it also can follow the whole complaints procedure as well, so it sort of ties into the complaints procedure. It's not the same thing.
And also this committee's had a bit of experience of looking at this area because a couple of years ago Councillor Patchett also produced some work on customer satisfaction.
The satisfaction level isn't across everything that we do, it's basically people that interact within this building by telephone or in person, so people are accessing the services in this building, so it's not people at the country park, it's not their rubbish business, it's just within
Direct.
Direct services.
Yeah. Okay, good clarification. Anybody, any other questions on that? Very good, in that case we'll move on. Thank you, Simon. Next one.
This is the final measure, percentage of corporate plan achieved, which is sitting on green at present.
Great. This one speaks for itself, doesn't it? It's like the overall, the meta indicator. Okay, very good. Any comments, questions? Okay, so here's the final question. What about the format? How do people feel about the format? It's the first time we've tested it.
Well, Chair, obviously I think Simon's already mentioned it. It should be just scroll up vertically so that we can see what's going on instead of having to constantly go backwards and forwards on.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, that, Councillor Robertson. I mean, you can make it smaller and scroll about easily, of course, that's the main issue. But the point is, if you start condensing it down too small, you can't see the tracking. We even had a scrutiny committee, a scrutiny work group to look at the tracking on it, because before you never got tracking on it. So you only had the in-year, so you couldn't measure year-on-year performance. So if we can still do it and make it so that you can see over a period of time, let me come back to that. Councillor Wesley.
I actually, as a guest here, I actually quite like it better than trying to look at the paper ones, which are a little bit cumbersome. But you could have a fixed pane, couldn't you? And then
you could have a fixed pane, actually, that's probably the best way to do it. Yeah. One minute.
I was going to agree. I think that for me, though this is slightly cumbersome in this design, I think the idea is much better. I find it easier to engage with it, to read it, to understand it, and because it's big, you get, I don't know, you just get a better feel of what's going on. It also appears to be quicker.
It is actually, doesn't it?
And
also Simon's presenting it because nobody's asking any questions.
And it's also cheaper.
It is cheaper, less impact on resources. Okay, so did you have a comment?
No, it was just simply to reiterate what's been said, really, that I simply couldn't read it in that format, in paper format. It's too small, even with my glasses and the magnifying glass, it's too small.
Okay, good. And this also opens it up to public, so you don't have to have the documents beforehand or download them, so everybody can see in a very transparent manner. I think that the main point is it is a bit cumbersome to scroll around, but actually I think the split pane will do the trick actually. Yeah, and then you can see, because what we really want to see is the left-hand side, the content, and then you can scroll the data across easily enough. And I guess you could even probably drop it down a little bit of size. Wendy, could you please ask for the next meeting? Say, I think the consensus is we're generally happy with it as a format, but can you please put the pane in it so we can see the narrative? Councillor Pritchard, do you have any comments? It's the first time we've seen it and had us discuss it anyway, isn't it? So you've got nothing really to compare it to.
But it's, for me, plain, simple, good for a comparator. It's really a stretch, it's good.
Very good. Okay, thank you. I'll take that support then. Right, okay, so that's that agenda item done. Normally at this point, Julie, who usually presents the figures, would go. But Simon's staying. Simon's been.
It's like to know. You get that ice cream and
off again for this one.
No, do we need it straight away? Yes, we do actually. Yeah. Sorry, Wendy. So Simon is Tony in this meeting. Simon's going to carry on. So again, to recap for non-members of the committee or new members, that was the item where we go through what we call the corporate plan. The idea is it gives us some insight to people who want to call in or areas we'd like to scrutinise in more detail. We then move on to what we call the rolling work programme, the next agenda item. And the rolling work programme basically is our collection of assignments that we've worked on in the past 12 months or that we're working on currently. And it's very simply a spreadsheet with the assignment number on, the detail, the owner of the chair of the panel, the assignment panel, the objectives, and then a timetable of activity relating to that, right the way through to when we've concluded it through this committee. Once it goes on from here to strategy to full council to implementation, and then we implement. At 1 year after implementation, we do a review, and we've got lots of those coming up a bit later on. So here, Simon, this is normally my job that you're controlling for us. You actually don't, in a way, you don't actually need to do anything as such on there at the moment, Simon, because all we do here is we look at the projects. And what we do, this again used to be in paper format, but we're trialling it here in electronic format for the same reasons, because it has many columns and it gets a bit small even for any free size paper. But essentially that's got all the information on it and we can refer to it as we go along if we need to. And it simply maps on, basically it's our way of being able to summarise at the end of the year for full council exactly what we've done in terms of our performance of our own committee. And I think with that actually, Simon, you could probably take a break for a moment. Okay. Thank you, and we'll put the lights back on, Wendy, thank you. You may find actually we don't need it as much as we think we do actually, that's the irony of it, that's what we're referring to it. It's particularly my way of keeping on top of things. Councillor Amy, you okay?
Yeah.
Just woke you up?
Yeah.
Bright lights. Right, on with the programme. So, what we do at this point is we go down all the activities we set ourselves, and the first one is the management of closed churchyards. Now, this was brought to scrutiny some time ago, and again we could drill into it on the spreadsheet and could see when it came up. It was initially, we did some research on it with a former councillor, and we then decided we could have a look at it a different way. What we had was an action for the resources manager, Tony, to come back to us with status on this to see if we need to continue or not. And Simon is going to update us using this document on the management of closed churchyards. And you've all got it in your pack and you've read it anyway.
Thanks, Chairman. I probably don't need to add much to what is written here. Essentially, the law on churchyards is old, it's very old, it's been consolidated, not just simply to Act, and it predates that by quite some way. It provides a somewhat cumbersome set of mechanisms by when a Church of England churchyard is closed, the parochial church council, which is the C of E body which looks after the assets of a local parish church, has the ability to eventually say, this is really now a piece of open space, parish council, you have it. The parish council then has 3 months, and it really is a do or die situation. 3 months in which they have to decide, forever, in principle, whether they want to keep it and look after it, or bat it on to the district council. If they choose to bat it on to the district council, that decision is irrevocable, although we'll come on to how we might effectively revoke it. And the district council then picks up the responsibility. Of course, when it does so, it declares those costs to be a special expense, because it wouldn't be fair to charge all the parishes in the district that haven't done that a share of the costs of the
So it gets charged back to that parish?
So it gets charged back to that parish, not through the parish council, but to the same people whom their parish council charges a precept to. What we have said is that the district council is going to be happy to hand these things back. The law doesn't quite allow it, so what we do instead is put in place an agency agreement whereby the parish council agrees to take on all VDC's responsibilities in this regard, and effectively that does the job, because the parish council then picks up the cost, VDC ceases to pick up the cost, and the parish council is responsible. Clearly, if the parish council fundamentally failed, VDC might need to step back in and sort of seize it back, because there will be a risk of legal liability, but unlikely to be an issue in practice. And that's really it, Chair.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because that fits in less than 1.5 sheets of sides of paper. I feel like we discussed that quite a while. Does anybody have any comments or questions on this? I thought you might do, Councillor Frederick.
I've actually been through this process and but there seems little point in passing it on to Daventry, because from a parish council point of view, because you get recharged anyway. How many such arrangements are there, Simon? Not many, are there?
There are 6, I think. There's Daventry, which obviously was slightly different because there wasn't a parish council at the time.
That's regarding Holy Cross.
Exactly so. Newnham, Wheaton, obviously your own.
And how many of them want to take it back? All of them?
At the moment, nobody. Sorry. At the moment, nobody's process says they want to take it back. I'm expecting that some will, but
I think my own parish council was considering, only for one reason, that Enterprise didn't do a very good job on actually.
So they thought they could do better themselves.
We like the system of saying, Daventry, do it, and we recognise that we have to pay for it. As long as you've got a decent contractor doing it, I don't have a problem with the recharging bit. It's worked out all right. And also we had a very, very costly wall had to be replaced. That cost many thousands, and of course we were Daventry financed it, and we gradually paid for it over 5 years. So it does work out a lot better. I'm quite happy with the system as long as you've got a good contractor in place.
Councillor Osborne. And again, as we go forward in the future years, you might have more confidence in the contractor than perhaps you do currently. Any further comments or questions? In that case, then, thank you, Simon. I think on that particular, that will now come off the rolling work programme, because we've concluded the matter in a quite straightforward manner, actually. So what I'll do here is, on my rolling work programme, I simply thought we'll remove the item. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is your maiden speech, actually, Councillor Pritchard. You get to give us an update. Now, a bit of background for members and attendees. This began with Councillor Randall. Like I've said, this is an apolitical committee, and actually I always felt that Councillor Randall was a very active and vigorous member of this committee. And I said to Councillor Pritchard, he's got quite an active follow, because I like to be objective here, but I do appreciate in a majority Conservative administration we have to have extra vigour in keeping us on our toes, and I think Councillor Randall was very good at that. So on this one, Councillor Randall began the project, and Councillor Pritchard has agreed to take it over kindly. And on this one, because this is the first one, I've agreed for him to give us a verbal update, and then we'll look to get a written one at the next meeting. So over to you, Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chairman. The task panel aim, actually, overarching, was to establish how many empty commercial buildings there are within the district, and to ensure everything is being explored to bring them back onto the commercial market. Allied to that, there were some other task objectives set out out in February 2016. I think they're equally important to understand why they're empty, and I've had a look at that as well. There's also some secondary considerations that I found, which is, of course, feasibility of utilising some living accommodation attached to some of these empty commercial properties, or indeed conversion to living accommodation, which again was in those initial task objectives. And also have a look at any economic correlation, knowing that we've got X amount of commercial properties empty currently. I kindly had liaison with Simon, who's produced some information for me.
Simon Bowers, along with Tony Gillett. Tony Gillett. Okay. Yeah, he's usually here, of course, as the correspondent.
And Michael, one of the officers, also forwarded some information as well. So in terms of progress, initially I was provided with some quite raw data, actually, with just detailing briefly the properties within the district that are empty, and that was some 271 was the total count. But I managed to then find some much more informative data, which looked at some of the account holders, who they were, the nature of the premises, and how long they've been empty, and where those premises were exactly. And also, bits of data that I brought in were some employment figures that I looked back at, as well as those that are currently making claims in terms of benefits, to see if there's any knock-on effect, any sequelae in terms of the amount of properties that are empty. So if you look at the first data sheet, which was raw data, the information that came from that was only that the number was 271 properties. The second data sheet was interesting, actually, revealed the type of properties, and the majority were listed as office and premises, and then the second data sheet included those offices and premises and other empty properties from Daventry District Council as account holders as well. And it was evident that by far it was offices and premises that out of that number that were currently vacated, including many held by Icon Operations Limited as well. Other major listings included warehouse and premises and workshop and premises, or stores themselves and premises. But undoubtedly most properties listed concerned a time period, chronology from about 2008 up to now, for the last 8 years, and indeed more listed concerned the dates over the last 4 or 5 years. And it's important, that 2008 figure, and I think you know why in a minute when I go on to tell you. I've spoken to Simon Bowers, and indeed the evidence is there. It suggested that the district is performing particularly well with its own properties, has a fairly low rate of empty properties themselves when compared to other areas. This was anecdotally. I think in the future some figures might be forthcoming in terms of providing comparator, which will be important regionally, nationally. But I think we're doing well in terms of the council itself. I think it's important also to look at what liaisons have taken place between Daventry District Council. I mean, it's very difficult, perhaps Simon might add to this after, in terms of any conflict of interest, knowing that the council has empty commercial properties. It has been listed, no, there's not me suggesting this, it's been listed in other papers that I've been through. So the liaison itself between the council and the account holders of these empty properties, I wanted to know how formal this was, how often there was engagement, what form it took place, and what support was offered by the council in terms of assisting finding potential tenants, any marketing, or any financial for remedial work. Then we come on to employment. Again, the last figures available for April to March 2016, the highest rate of people employed since figures were available, going right back to 2004. Within Daventry itself, these figures are. And I think it's important to provide some triangulation back to that date, which is the fateful date towards the end of 2008, where there was an economic downturn. There was a dramatic fall in employment, which didn't reach similar levels again until 2014. But currently where we are, Daventry has an employment rate of 81.4%, East Midlands 74%, and the GP GB at 73%, so doing very well. And just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any adverse effect. The amount of these properties were empty in terms of job seekers. Again, lowest job seeker rates currently, doing very well since available figures, with an increase at the end again, unfortunately 2008, again not reaching those previous rates until 2014. It's taken a good long recovery of 6 years or so. That correlates to some of the empty listings as well. But again, Daventry 0.6% in terms of job seekers. East Midlands is 1.3, GB is 1.5. And finally, I did interview an ex-retail owner who had a retail venture some 6 or 7 years ago now in Daventry. Has now changed tack somewhat. There's now hospitality owner with 2 premises, both Daventry and a rural premise. Asked him what happened, why do you think these properties are empty, what's not attractive about them? And again, he pointed to that late 2008 where it hit business hard in terms of retail, and online retail grew exponentially. Office space was left unoccupied. Retail was hit hard. Energy rates were up. In conjunction with business rates and decreased footfall, all had an impact. So many properties to him seemed too small within the town centre themselves to do much with. In fact, he suggested an amalgamation of properties if they were side by side. Somewhat unadaptable, and a lot were in a poor state of disrepair, where he felt the financial outlay would not be recouped in terms of an ongoing venture. Finally, so these are up for discussion if you do wish to keep this on the work programme, but we need to acknowledge this is a national trend really, although Daventry is doing quite well in terms of percentage. It's unlikely to return to those occupational rates due to online retail on office services that are no longer offered face-to-face as predominantly. There's no effect on employment, which is good to know. Another recommendation: investigate if the council has or is willing to have sort of a demonstrative database, much more sort of online mapping where properties are available, or rental, put them in touch with people that external people could then access, and the size of those premises as well, which is not as visible. Another recommendation could be regulating with account holders themselves to offer district council support, and of course Simon may tell me that it's happening already, so I apologise in advance, and what incentives that might be provided. And finally, penultimately, and it does need to be an inspection of these properties to ascertain potential for accommodation use, if that's the way we want to sort of pursue perhaps use of this. Again, going back to that task objective, it's placed within that. And looking at what other areas, and I think it's always helpful, you look at a bespoke area like Sheaf Street, rebrand it with independents, to look at commercial properties with favourable rates, and that becomes a bespoke part of Daventry to try and provide footfall. They've done that in cities and towns actually. Fargo Street in Coventry is one successful venture.
Thank you very much, Herb. A lot to get through there actually, which is good. I think what you've done actually, Councillor Pritchard, is given us the full report but verbally. So in some respects all we need to have is that come through as a formal paper on the agenda with those recommendations, and I think that'll be pretty much there. So then it comes around as a formal set of recommendations from the committee. So between now and the next meeting it would be helpful if you could shape that into the final report. But let's take any comments on it first of all, thank you Simon for your input into that, much appreciated. The purpose of the clarification earlier was to make sure we talk about this Simon, not the other Simon. I don't know if there are any other Simons, but we know you two.
There are quite a number.
There are probably more, so, but thank you for engaging in the topic. I also see that on Sheaf Street there's a new health food store opened up, which I was peeking through the window, and there's some pretty impressive brands in there actually, so pretty premium brands. So that'll be interesting, it fits in with the conversation. And of course the other topic is we had planning recently for the Joy Centre to be turned into multiple occupancy. So that might be one such example. Let's open it to the floor for any comments. Comments and any guidance, any questions, comments for Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Osborne.
I have to say I haven't listened to one of these before, but I must compliment the council on how he put it over, and I should look forward to seeing it in writing. I thought that was good. Yeah, I thought you'd gone about it correctly. I thought it was good, very, very good, but I've seen one before at the stage. I've never been to your committee.
Well, I think Councillor Pritchard did very well since his first meeting, actually.
I think it was
But
great.
he's a very articulate chap, of course.
He's a good old boy, is that what you mean, Chairman? Yeah.
I think, okay, data was strength. That is my job, data, looking at data. So, my data.
You do it well, then.
Yeah. So, are you academic? Yeah. Councillor Roberts.
I was mainly going to ask whether or not we had within Daventry City Council an estate agency, or do we have any, as it were, favourite estate agents that we might use for this purpose?
Chairman, we don't have an estate agency per se. Clearly we advertise our own properties, and we have chartered surveyors who handle that work. I think, coming to see what the report finally comes out, like Councillor Pritchard is not suggesting we try and step into the estate agent's shoes, because that's a commercial market and we take it terribly well, but provide some kind of shop window, which is an interesting thought actually, and it may be something a new economic development officer will be able to look at. If we can provide something which says go here and then it links you through to a commercial estate agent for that property or whatever, then that might not be a bad way of proceeding. We don't have it at present.
There's some overlap here potentially with your topic.
Exactly why I asked the question.
Yeah, so we'll revisit that shortly. Thank you very much. We had the word triangulation there, which is always a good word we should be hearing on this committee as well, about examining data from different perspectives and using it to cross-reference. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Pritchard. Okay, so I think that's well received in that respect, but you've still got some work to do. What will happen is, please could you come back for the next meeting with the full written up paper, which talks about the original objectives, the method, and actually top end it with the executive summary, and then have a set of recommendations. To make it go through this committee easier and also onto full council ultimately, could you please make the the recommendations smart as well? Okay, so I'm going to draw your attention actually for a moment to the timetable at the back of the document, the papers. The next time we meet is actually the 8th of November. The agenda is published on Halloween, 31st of October. And therefore we need to get all the items into Wendy by the 24th of October. But we also like to, we need to really out of politeness circulate it to senior management team for comments as they report with the recommendations by the 7th of October. So that gives us a little window of turning those around. So it's not long, basically you've got a month to write it up. Okay.
Would you provide a template? Thank you. That's really.
Thank you. And you can always look back at other examples and ask for other examples. So Councillor Frenchman's churned a few out this time as well, for instance, and Councillor Wesley. Good. And thank you for your comments, Councillor Osborne. With that one, we'll move on. We'll conclude that will come back to committee as a full and final report. Thank you, Councillor Pritchard, much appreciated. Good to have that input. The next one is Councillor Frenchman, and Councillor Frenchman is going to give us a very brief update on a previous topic we've opened up, which is what DDC can do to improve business rates for commercial users. Councillor Frenchman, can you give us a very quick update on that?
I can. This was someone else's task panel which I took over when we reconvened after the elections. I went to visit the guy who, Simon, what's the chap's name who looks after the business rates?
You mean
the officer?
Michael,
that's it. And we had a very long chat, and the bottom line is we appear to do everything we can within the confines of what we're allowed to do and what makes economic sense, because we can do more, but it will cost us money.
So you have to invest possibly not necessarily positive return on that investment.
Correct. So my view on it is that there's really nothing that we need to look at here. We're doing as well as we can under the circumstances and under government legislation and other sort of things that are set outside our own, that we have no control over.
So within the scope of action we can take in the parameters, within the remit of the original scoping document, I think there's no further action.
Yes.
It's interesting, the whole point of having the scrutiny assignment is you have a look at it, and actually if there is no further action, we don't flog the horse. We've had a couple of occasions on the past where we've closed things back down again, so we could focus on other activities. So we wouldn't beat it dead. The idea is we get it, we look at it, we turn it around, bring it back, or we close it down. Any comments on this one? Councillor Wesley?
Does that go through the whole process, Chair? So that will still go like on an annual, does that go on an annual review, sort of, even though nothing's being done on it, does that just sort of follow through, or does it just disappear off the...
In this case, what we'll do is we basically, that verbal update to me says that there's no further action, so we close that one down and we basically put it on the working programme to say that's closed down. So we won't come back at it unless there's a need if we come back to it later.
There also has to be a material change in external circumstances, perhaps to do with the government and the NDRs and the non-domestic rates.
Yeah, but if anything changes, we can relook at it. But at this point in time, there's no further action required. Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Okay, so we'll put that one basically as closed. And the next one on the agenda is 5D, to understand how DDC can offer profitable, in brackets, in inverted commas, non-statutory public benefit services, which is Councillor Robertson to present a scoping document. This is on page 13. This is your first time, actually, Councillor Robertson. Can I please do two things? Number one, tell you to make sure you always use the proper template. I know we've got there in the end. It speeds things up in terms of the questions we need answered. I know you had some format issues. And secondly, please populate all the boxes. We didn't hold out this time because we wanted to get it back in. But you get things like task completion date and things like that. We need to hold you to it so we can keep moving. And also, there's basic information that is required, such as the corresponding portfolio holder. There's information like that you should find out in the scoping period. So it's really a lesson for you as a member of the committee going forward, and any other members as well. Keeps us tight. That also links back in with how quickly things come back round, because I don't always get a chance to look at them in time to get them closed down and go back to you. Okay. Anyway, now I've given you my lecture. Could you please talk us through the scoping document?
Certainly. Well, this project scoping arrangement took the lead, took its lead from an idea about whether or not Daventry District Council were able to support local businesses more, and financially, and it turned out at the very early stage that was pretty much a non-starter, because they can't do it directly, we can't do it directly, because of legislation effectively, but we do support businesses indirectly through a foundation called the Fredericks Foundation, which I personally never heard of. But
what's it called?
The Fredericks Foundation. I've never even heard of this.
The Fredericks Foundation?
Yeah.
I can tell you I've never heard of it.
No. I don't know.
Have you heard of it?
I have indeed heard of them, only because we're working with them. But,
yeah, well, there you go. And we already do contribute towards their work, and so as a consequence of that, I had to rethink what the scope was going to be, and so I therefore thought, well, an interesting study would be to find out whether or not we were doing enough to promote our own commercial ways of going, and of course this is Simon's particular interest, because he's the guy that does it all, and I'm sure that he's got lots to say about that. But the initial idea was, as the chairman has already explained, this is my first time, basically I left a few boxes empty because I didn't know who they were going to be, and I still don't, quite frankly. The task chair, I was told, well, that's me.
It is you.
Yeah.
And actually, let's be clear about this, you are responsible for running and delivering the project.
Fine. Now I did, to start this off, I explained to all councillors in an email that I wanted to split the thing into three separate areas of study. Firstly, I wanted to make sure that we were doing enough to offer internal services to other councils, effectively what that means. The second thing was, are we doing enough in terms of services that we could move into ourselves as external to that? And thirdly, whether or not we needed to take on any partners within the local authority network to, as indeed do the county council. And I believe that is called the Local Government Services, something of LGSS, Local Government.
There are a number of such organisations. The one NCC's part of is indeed the LGSS, Local Government Shared Services.
Shared Services.
There's also North Group, which is owned by Norfolk County Council, and others.
And there are yet more. In Leicestershire, they've got an organisation, RESPO, I think, which is more a purchasing than it is a such purchasing organisation.
So various kind of models of
anyway,
collaboration.
The whole thing is predicated around the idea of making Daventry more independent financially, and so that's where I'm coming from. Now, as I say, I emailed every councillor, and I've been singularly underwhelmed by the response, quite frankly, although I did have some. And it's usually a question of time, and also some of the councillors that might wish to be involved in it are currently heavily involved in the political scene of elections. So, well, yeah, there you go. So I'm looking for help on that.
So you need to, so assuming in a moment we approve the scoping document to go ahead, you'll need to do another call to action to get members.
Exactly right, and yes.
This is interesting, isn't it? Because you wonder what, I mean, people obviously use silence to get councillors to get involved and to represent, and you'd think these things would be quite interesting about moving the authority forward. So that makes sense to me. Does it make sense to everybody else? Any comments, any challenges, guidance, etc. for Councillor Robinson? Councillor Robinson.
Can I just ask about this Frederick's Foundation? I'm sorry, I know you did say you'd never heard of it, I never heard of it. Is it, when we talk about that, is that local to Daventry? Is it national? Is it where they're based?
I'm not too sure what their scope is.
So, Chairman, it's a national charity. Right. It has historically operated in localities throughout England, including Northamptonshire, which we benefited from. Having said which, we are aware that the Foundation has had some financial difficulties of its own. In fact, the local chap, breaking confidences here, has explained to us that while they're very good at doing what they do, they're not so good at fundraising, and therefore a lot of the local activities actually coming to an end, which is rather unfortunate. But the money we have given them still has to be used for the purpose for which we gave it, so that shouldn't stop. Okay. And so I wouldn't expect too much more from the British.
It might be the first and last time we ever hear of it.
I was just going to further explain that according to the financial officer, we have given them so far about a £12,000 grant to the foundation themselves to use, and it's called the Second Homes Fund. I'm quite sure what that means, to be honest, but and various grants have been given and will presumably continue to be given, providing that they can continue in business, which there seems to be a little bit of doubt on that.
Chairman, if I may, it's probably helpful. My understanding is there's no intention to give further grants because they're not necessarily in a position to carry on doing it. Money they've already got, which is sort of recycled because it's given as loans and should in principle be returned by the business as they grow, should continue to be recycled in our area, but there's no plans as far as I'm aware to give any more. Second Homes Fund, just for the sake of information, is, you recall, we as the billing authority have the power to charge or not council tax on second homes. Obviously, DDC keeps part of that money, but the county council keeps the larger part, as it keeps the larger part of all the council tax we collect. So a deal was done with all the districts some years ago that a substantial share of the money the county council gets from second homes decisions taken by the councils will be essentially given back to the districts for use on mutually good objectives. And that money is needed to kind of top up the gravel fund. That is actually coming to an end. There isn't much of that money left in the county council. Perhaps not surprisingly, it hasn't been used as an initiative.
Thank you, Simon, for that explanation. Very helpful. Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's still relevant, but a few years ago, I had two premises that I paid rates on. And I was told, and I was a councillor at the time, I was told, oh, you can get one of those free. So I phoned up the council, and yes, you can, as long as it's below a certain area. But you have to apply for it. So I applied for it and got it free at one of my premises. And then I closed one of the premises down, and the other premise, again, was lower than the level, so I got that one free. I was a councillor at the time. I wasn't aware that you got those rates free below a certain level. I had to find out from somebody. Somebody told me about it, and I had to apply for it. So what I'm saying is, do people know about that in general?
I think that's more your opinion than it is mine, but basically, I think you're talking about small business rates relief.
Yes.
Chairman, it may help. My understanding is the rules have been changed since your experience, and now that relief is given automatically.
Oh, right. Well, it wasn't in those days, but I understand. That's fair enough.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, good point, Kevin. I think the basis of what you're describing is a communication actually issue, whatever that means. Councillor Howard.
Yeah, I run a small business, and I know in Stratford District Council, as soon as you register anywhere, they've got you. They come and look at the premises and go, you either fall within or without. And if I registered in Daventry, then the Daventry Council would also know straight away that I'm registered here. So that's why you register your businesses. So it is automatic.
Thank you for the clarification. Things have moved on apparently. Does anyone have any further comments?
Can I ask another question?
Please do.
I understand that if it's within your portfolio role, you can't join one of the groups. But I saw the email come from me, and I thought that sounds interesting. But it excludes portfolio holders.
Yeah, you can't.
Reasons?
Yeah, basically you can. We can speak to you about the issue, but it's about your influence on the group. And the idea is, because the idea behind scrutiny is that we scrutinise performance, and the performance is delivered by you as portfolio holders in conjunction with the officers. But having said that, Councillor Robertson is very welcome to speak to you about things, but not as your role as basically forming the recommendations. So please give some support.
Happy to assist.
Yeah,
Thank you very much for that.
That's really
To the Chair, basically, you're not the only portfolio holder who said that. Others have expressed interest, and it seems that they're keener than others for some reason, presumably because they're big counties.
Yeah, possibly that might be the case, or they might have, because some people might feel they don't want to get involved because they don't know about the subject.
Well, I did say in my email through the Chair that basically I think that people should have some small amount of business knowledge, and I think there's an awful lot of people don't have it.
That's why it's a box. Sorry, Chair.
That's fine. Yeah, Councillor Wesley.
Just a clarification on membership. Or doing a piece of work like this. Can we co-opt people from outside the?
We've had this discussion before, actually. Basically, to be on a working group, you need to be a member of the council, the district council, but not a portfolio holder. But we can engage people to get, for inputs like information and that kind of thing. Because we had this very conversation about Councillor Taylor from the Town Council during one of the programmes, and she's very, very welcome to speak to her as a stakeholder, but not as a member. And basically, the point is ultimately the working group comes together and they're the ones responsible for the recommendation, but ultimately the recommendation comes to the chair anyway. To be honest, you can have conversations, and I can't necessarily know how much influence they have, but we just have to make sure we're not over-influenced, apart from those people giving testimony, perhaps. So hopefully that answers that question. Simon, who is the best corresponding portfolio?
I think that's Councillor Paul.
Councillor Paul, that's what I'm saying.
Economic development. Sorry, economic regeneration.
Okay, so Councillor Paul's usually here to speak for himself, but he's not. But we'll note that that's Councillor Paul. All we need to do now, finally, if there are no further comments, is give you some dates. Because we want to get these things moving, and because we obviously have our own reporting back to do, I would like to suggest that the 8th of November you give an interim report. It could be literally one side of paper. I prefer it written. And again, you follow the timetable at the back of the document, page 35, with the full report to come back to us on the 7th of Feb. I appreciate it's quite a chunky project, actually. But let's aim for those dates, and if anything happens, we'll review it, but at least have something written back to us for the disciplined focus for the next meeting. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. So I will note that on the rolling work programme as well. Thank you. That looks like a fresh project, so we'll approve that one, and that'll move ahead. So 8th of November for interim written, full report February meeting. Otherwise, we have nothing to look forward to as well, so that's what it's full report February. The next one is, are the needs of fitness being met in rural areas? Now, this is a bit of an intriguing one because Councillor Brown is not here. As we know, he's in Scotland. But we do have the scoping document. I'm not sure how to deal with this one, actually, honestly. Look, you can read the document, it looks pretty straightforward. If nobody has any reservations, I recommend that we let him crack on with it. And I actually speak to him outside the meeting and say, same deadlines as what you've got, Councillor Robinson. Any comments on that one, or are we happy to tell him to go ahead? I think it's uncontroversial. And it's a piece of work that ties in with a piece of work in performance indicators, and I think it's a pretty good scoping document. It actually speaks to itself in its absence.
Will this include Leisure Centre East?
It's a good question, actually. I think by definition it should include it in scope or consider it, because it's basically rural areas. Yeah. Good question. I think he could answer that very easily himself and also include that in scope. By definition, I think it would be. Any further comments or questions? So, members of the committee, we're happy to tell him to go ahead, so we don't lose any time. Otherwise, then you'll have to come back next time. We don't lose time this one. By the way, if this were a report, we would probably wouldn't do this. So, okay, we'll say we'll approve that one. 8th of November to come back with an interim written full report February. To be fair to Councillor Brown, you can turn this around very quickly, and we've been good involved. Next one is the Councillor Frenchman's turn, which is DDC and parishes, Corporation over major planning applications, and if we need some extra input on this one, we have Councillor Osborne as well, so it's interesting to see the cultural meeting. Councillor Frenchman, talk to us about this, please.
Well, as most people know, I was a parish councillor for a very long time before I became a district councillor. And then, having become a district councillor, I've been on the planning committee for the last 7 years, I think, however long it is. And in my role as a ward member, obviously I speak to a lot of parishes and they speak to me, and most of the correspondence is either about neighbourhood plans or other planning issues. What it appears to me from listening to these people is that very often an application will come in that, for want of a better word, overwhelms the resources of a parish council. And Overston is a particular example of this, and they had to join with Moulton, and still they had to get extra resources in, and they have a full-time planning consultant in Jane. I was getting it wrong, but it's not.
The Clark.
Yeah.
The Malton Clark, isn't it?
Jane Austen, that's it. Yeah. Who works full-time only on planning matters, and she has other clerks doing the normal clerky things. And this came to a head recently with Harleston, who have been sort of on the edge of what's called the sustainable urban extension part of the district, which fronts onto the to Northampton and the borough. And you've got Harleston as a village of 174 houses with a clerk who does 15 hours a month, and suddenly they've got 2, 3, 4 and possibly even more applications coming in that will eventually increase the parish size to 2,000 odd houses, and they've got 174 at the moment. And that, quite frankly, they are struggling to deal with the sheer weight of documents, sheer weight of time, sheer cost of dealing with these applications.
Councillor Frenchman, what is the consequence of that problem?
mainly they don't get anything. They end up with an imperfect planning system, which means they get no benefit, which is what's happened with Harleston in particular. They've had 200 houses built, or however many it is, at Harleston Manor, and they've not had one single penny of community benefit from that. But if we work more closely with them, or they work more closely with us, or with the planning officers and with the developers, then that situation could have been easily avoided. I'm sure lots of people around the table have heard of Sam Dobbs, who's also the sergeant in Daventry, who's chair of Harleston, and he's always banging on about the fact that they've got no space to bury people now. And if the parish gets much larger, they'll definitely have no space to bury people. So that's one of the aspects, things of getting involved. So what I wanted to look at was, there seems to be a very much, whatever anybody else tells me, and this is personal experience, and us and them attitude to planning applications. We need to work more closely together, there needs to be more cooperation, and there certainly needs to be more transparency. And a couple of times myself and John Shepherd, who is my ward partner, have tried to get involved in, for instance, Section 106 agreements and how we can help our parishes achieve more. We have been told that it's none of our business, and I find that attitude from officers particularly galling. So I feel that this needs to be looked at. We need to find better ways of working together, better ways of cooperating together, and making sure that the bottom line is that the development goes where it's needed, not necessarily where parish councils want it, but you know, we have to sometimes accept these developments in our backyards, but that they get the absolute maximum that they can out of these developers and out of these general developments to benefit their parishes. And to give you an idea, Jane Austen at Malton now gets something like £700 per house out of developers, on top of everything that they're doing as a legal requirement. So there's the Section 106, there's all the other sills or whatever, but she's managed to, by twisting their arms, by getting resources in there, get even more resources, and it comes to millions of pounds.
Because they're able to focus, etc., at the beginning of the process.
Yeah. So you know, that's really what it's about. It's to really just get Daventry and the parishes working better together. A major application is generally 10 houses or more, because obviously there's a lot that are small ones that people bicker about all the time. But
that's because there is a definition, a strict definition of this.
I believe so.
Yeah, I'll start with the first thing we've defined at the beginning of the process.
What is a major application? Is it 10?
I think it is 10. Yeah.
It is, yeah. So that's what, 10 houses. Yeah. So that's really where we're at, and I want to make it easier for everybody to work together and to get involved at the right time of the planning application, because as some people who are not on planning won't know, is that there is opportunities really right at the very beginning of the initial process, even possibly before there is a planning application, to talk to developers and work together to get really screw as much pound notes as you can out of the developers, which is what it's about, I have to say.
Okay, thank you. I think before we take questions, let's recap on the purpose of the scoping document. So the scoping document provides the framework for which we'll go and investigate further. As we could see earlier, interestingly, Councillor Frenchman had business rates which he took over, and he did some research on that and concluded there was no further action required. Once scoping documents are approved, I like them to get stuck in. But obviously sometimes we've had them come back and there's only been one or two recommendations. And the other purpose of scrutiny improvements is also to recommend improvements. That's obviously an output. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do is focus the conversation actually in two ways. First of all, I'd like to look at the general context of the scoping document and the rationale for undertaking the piece of work and explore that, and then go into some finer details. So first of all, do we have any general comments about the requirement for this? I think, Councillor Osborne, I'll take your point first. I'll go to Councillor Wesley first, then come back to you, okay? I'm mindful of the fact you're a portfolio order. Councillor Wesley.
Yeah, as the existing parish councillor also, I thought this was a really good idea. I do think it's time there was someone on this. I think it's for everybody's benefit in the district to actually focus that local knowledge, to be able to focus the local knowledge on what is required around any new major development. And sometimes, it is. I know from my own experiences, it is really, really difficult to resource that and to have enough technical knowledge and to even be there early enough to actually have any influence on it. And it is frustrating for parishes to sort of be sort of part way down the line and then feel, oh, you can comment on it, but actually that's already sorted out, or that's not sorted out. And I think it's to the detriment of democracy and the planning process sometimes, how we actually handle that. And I think if there's anything that we can do on that as a district council, I think it would be a good thing. So thank you to Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor. So your background, I also know both from your parish council work as a town councillor, but also as a clerk as well. You bring that up as well.
And I did put my hand up to assist.
Yes, very good. Thank you for offering support as well. This Councillor Osborne, your turn.
Right. My background is 33 years as a parish councillor and also chairman of planning. You probably don't know
in portfolio, of course. Yeah.
Yes, you probably don't know, but I sent out an email this weekend. That was not as a result of this. It was going to be, and it's sent to all parishes. I don't know whether you've seen it yet. You've seen it? You haven't?
I have, yes.
Yeah. Which has told them what we've told them before. In other words, if they oppose any planning application, or indeed support any planning application, there is no problem with them making, if they don't want 100 houses in their patch, or without prejudice comment at the end, should it happen, we would like this, that and the other to be considered. In other words, benefits to the parish. That has been available for a long time. We've told people at training sessions that, but now it's been told direct to them. There's a couple of bits on here I don't like, but I'm not expecting you to change it because I don't like them. I just want to talk roughly about them.
Yeah, Councillor Osborne, but before you do, can we reverse a bit? Are you suggesting that actually there is already very clear channels, but it's about reminding them what to do?
There is already clear channels that the parish council can say, I don't want that housing next to us, I don't want it in my village, but if it goes ahead, there is a system where planners, when they go to appeal, if the planners are, the first thing the inspector asks them, should you lose this appeal, what conditions do you want on it? So they have to say what conditions they want first. That is part of an appeal system. So what we're saying to the parishes is, they may not like the planning application, they may not want the houses, they may not want the particular application, but they can say, without prejudice, should it go ahead, we would like this benefit and this road and this to happen. That doesn't mean because they say that they're supporting the application.
Of course. Yeah.
So that's
So can I just, sorry to interrupt you, Steve, there. I've actually had 2 phone calls today from 2 different parish clerks asking me to explain that email to them because they didn't understand it.
well.
I got it because I know what you're saying.
I checked it with officers to make sure that they were happy. It's probably the way
I would have expressed it. What I'm really saying is I would have expressed it slightly differently.
Yeah, well, okay.
I think there's straight away. There's going back to the communication and competence issue. There might well be. That's where number one recommendation is that the communication.
It might be that. I don't know.
It could be as simple as that.
Yes.
That's one part.
Great. Let's go into a bit more detail, Councillor.
Right.
What do you recommend? Let's have a look at scoping document. What would you throw out or add in to help us?
Right. First of all, and I think Barry is quite aware of my position.
I am.
I have got no problem. We did ask parish councils whether quite a number of them would they be prepared to contribute towards a person to help parishes out, and no, they weren't prepared to. I accept that there is a person qualified over at Malton that does help Malton Parish Council out, and perhaps that could help other parishes. As far as I'm aware, there is no money available to do it from district. Okay.
Let me look at this logically. Are you talking about here the task objectives?
Sorry. Let's go.
We need to focus specifically on the scoping document.
Yeah.
If we've done it right, this should all be in there, even if the wording is slightly not as crisp as it might be for you.
Well, let's go to number 4 then.
So number 4 in the task objectives,
Yeah.
involvement of parishes and
Right,
development.
first of all, I would be totally against, personally, I'm not trying to tell you how to deal with it, I'm just telling my personal views.
Of course, it's helpful.
Parish involvement in pre-applications. The reason being is, certainly major applicants come to this council for pre-application advice, and they pay for it, and they pay quite handsomely for it. They don't expect, they say things that are confidential, they talk about things that are confidential, and they don't want it necessarily to go to parishes at that point. So they expect it to be confidential, and I would expect that if that went through, there would be less developers willing to pay for pre-application advice.
Okay, let me stop you there a second, because actually the objective is to look at the involvement of parishes in development negotiations at each one of those stages.
Yes.
So it might well be actually when we get into this that Councillor Frenchman has a conversation with you, informally or what have you, away from this committee, and you actually give him that recommendation. You say, well, do you realise if you were to do it this way, this will be one of the consequences?
I think we've had several informal talks over that. I think he's aware of my position. The next one is 106s, and again, I'd expect him to be aware of my position. No, I don't support personally parishes being involved in an early stage in 106s, or at any stage in 106s. 106s are difficult negotiations, only certain things can go through anyway, and it's very difficult with just 2 and 3 people around the table. You start sticking parish councils around the table as well, and you would never get any negotiations.
Doesn't this actually go to the heart of what Councillor Frenchman is saying, that this is where the problem is?
I appreciate what you're saying, Stephen. I disagree with you, but you disagree with me. So that's
right. Yeah.
But if you look, I want to come and talk to you officially about it, so I can log what you're saying. So what I'm asking you to do is not at this stage to give me your answers that you'll give me when we come to interview you.
Okay.
You need.
Do you object to being asked?
No,
I'll be sending you an email when this is sorted to have to get you a date, Steve, that we can interview you to get your views on all these in the way that you just outlined.
Yeah, in
a formal way.
In a formal way.
And the next one, the SIL, I haven't got any problems with parishes getting a SIL, because parishes will get that anyway. 2 different percentages, one if you've got a neighbourhood plan and one if you haven't. Okay. The percentage is different, which will automatically come to you.
Very good.
And that's good for the parishes to use, well, not exactly for what they want to, but firstly for what they want to. Okay.
And Councillor Osborne, because that's the point, isn't it? Because not everybody will understand this as deeply as you do. and the issues. So that's why we like to explore things. But,
Right, there is a levy, community infrastructure levy, that at the planning stage is levied on floor area, on area of a house. So depending on how big it is, depends on how much seal you pay. This seal comes to the district council, and a percentage of it, I think is it 25?
15% without and 25% with.
It was 17, no. It was 17.5 without, but they're the two percentages that the parishes get, which is very valuable. They get that regardless of whether they've ever supported the application, not supported the application. That will come to them if it happens in their parish. As long as the outline application and detailed application have haven't gone in before seal started.
Okay, Councillor Osborne, can I pause it for you a moment, because I think also that Simon wants to add some technical details in as well, which may further give us some. By the way, to remind you, we're happy to take your feedback because it helps us shape the scripting document. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. I think it might just be useful. I've got a long note from the community manager that I do not propose to go through in detail. I think some of it actually she will want to present to you as part of your task panel, the community manager.
Yes.
But if I can suggest a few alterations to the scoping document, and explain why I suggest those changes. The first one is in terms of task objectives. Councillor Osborne has said quite rightly that the seal is a levy, it's a tax. The consequence of that is not negotiated, and actually therefore there's nothing to discuss and nothing to negotiate. So to suggest that we involve parishes in a negotiation about it is misleading, because there's nothing to negotiate. So I suggest that comes out of the scope.
Yeah, let's take each one in turn. So are you happy to remove that one? Given
I want to leave it there.
You want to leave it there?
I have reasons for that which I won't go into at this meeting.
Okay, Councillor Wesley, quick comment from you. Please make concise.
I think there's issues around seal and how it's used, and I think that should be part of, and I think the parishes should be talking to the district council about that. It's still basically public money that's coming in mitigation to planning, and it should still. I think it should be part of this discussion. Whether it goes through or not is another matter. But
yes, because it's certainly what we talk about at this point in time. That's the purpose of the script document. Thank you, Councillor Robertson.
I was just going to say that I think what Simon's talking about is in fact making it clear that this is a national taxation scheme that we have no influence on. They may want to understand it better. I'm talking about the SIL.
It's influence of where the mitigating money actually is.
Well, that's up to your parishes how you spend it.
No, not the money.
Up to a point.
No, not the money that Daventry get.
No, not the money that Daventry get, but the money that the parishes get.
I'm talking about influence on the money Daventry.
Well, that's different.
This already proves to me actually we require a scoping document.
Chairman, if I may just read it. Involvement in parishes in development negotiations, SIL. My problem is a very simple one. There is no negotiation on that point.
No, how to spend the money rather than...
I understand the aspiration that's being alluded to, but that's a different point to the one that's
Well, I should take out the word... I'll think about it and...
Actually, we can't give you too much time to think about it, Councillor French, but it could be very simply a case of development negotiation stroke awareness or understanding, and that variability covers off the issues. Because as it's written, I understand the point is that, so the point is very technical, you can't negotiate on SIL, and therefore you can have that in your scoping document, but there is nothing to do, because the answer is it's already set. But actually, if you were to widen the topic out for number 4 and said involvement of parish in development negotiation stroke awareness of the issue, or something called it,
I think... let me just think about that one.
Okay, I'll think about it for a moment. We'll come back to that.
Okay, probably more substantively, Maria has, and I would have to share this concern about the task panel's purpose section on the second page, because at the end of the day, we're only allowed to pursue either planning obligations or indeed conditions that are necessary to make a development acceptable in planning terms. So to set an objective to achieve maximum community benefit is to run against the legislative and policy background. I would therefore, how you word it ultimately is up to you, but I would be inclined to suggest to lose the first paragraph and to vary the second one to something along the lines of assisting the communities regarding mitigation of development impacts. I know that's less desirable it may seem, but it's a question of respecting what the planning system allows us to do.
Again, I disagree totally with what you're saying, because having spoken to Jane Austen about this, she's receiving over and above what you might call the minimum legally allowed, and is achieving greater community benefit than just 106 and SIL, if you want to put it that way. So she's gaining more from talking and being involved with developers than you could ever get for her.
Well,
and I'm not talking about, this isn't about Daventry.
No,
this is about everybody in the district getting a better deal from these developments, and you're trying to limit it just to what our statutory development opportunities are. But there are ways of getting more out of these than just those.
Well, you need to be very clear that it doesn't influence the grant or lack of grant of planning permission, because if it does, then it's a
planning permission.
But ultimately, it's about planning permission, isn't it?
No, this is about a community benefiting.
Sorry, I've got it the wrong way around. Yeah, you could still have planning permission, but then it's the benefits that accrue from that.
But nevertheless, most of the benefits, Chairman, come from you haven't got planning permission. And that's what you're trying to get the planning permission, and that's where the difficulty can lie with people with on planning committees or local members taking too big an involvement with getting benefits on one hand and then taking decisions in planning on the other hand. It's very close to being.
I'm going to dig myself a really big hole and say this completely demonstrates to me the reason why we need this task panel. The entrenched position of the portfolio holder and the officers is the bit that needs challenging, and we've got nowhere near it, because every time we try to, we get shot down, or the officers try and change the wording to suit their requirements.
And you've already tried once.
No, I haven't.
You personally
Not like
haven't.
this.
Councillor Patchett did.
Well,
Councillor Patchett tried the same thing at another committee to try and put this in standing orders, and it didn't go through then.
Well, if it doesn't go through, it doesn't go through, but I want it looked at.
Yeah, it's a fair point, Councillor Osborne. Whether we have looked at it before or not, we've
I appreciate that.
Yeah, but actually, I mean, as you know, this is a long journey, and the conclusions may well be very simply communication.
I've got one more comment to make.
Or it may, but so, of course, as you know, once it leaves here, it still has to work its way through the council.
Oh, do it goes through the system.
Yeah, we'll come back to Simon's point in a second, actually, because I still want to, because I'd still like to get it to the right meaning before it leaves, so you can go away and do it with as much support as you can. Councillor Frenchman. Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, the last point I would make, the witnesses to be invited.
Yeah.
With respect, you've got Richard Woods, a policy man.
Yes, I realise that.
And I think you need a development control man there. So I would suggest that you include Thursfield or
I was going to take him off completely.
Or Eamon, yeah. They're the people that...
What's the generic name for those people?
Sorry?
What's the generic name for them?
If I may, Chairman, the appropriate officer is the development control manager, who is Keith Thursfield.
Yeah.
If you want to talk policy, then Richard Wood, not Woods, would be the right officer, and myself, because Richard is in my team.
So actually, can we simply put Keith Thursfield and Simon Bowers and take off Richard Woods?
Yeah.
Because he'd come for you anyway.
Maria Taylor should still be on the list.
Yeah, she's at the top.
And Maria Taylor's at the top. And we've got parish chairs?
Well, I mean, parish...
the chairman of the parish?
Yes.
I would expect him to go and talk to the parish chairman.
Yeah, parish.
Well, I'll ask Wendy to circulate an email to them, which she will do subsequently to this meeting.
Well, that's the easy one dealt with. I think actually this has demonstrated we have some tension here, which demonstrates we probably do need to look at something. It's the remit of this committee to look at things. We don't have to deliberately cause trouble, but we just like to look at things. But I still want to go back to some of these issues that Simon has actually. Did you have any other issues, Councillor?
I think I've been through the... I mean, there are other times when you will talk about it more in detail, but...
Well, when we get the report back, we'll talk a lot more.
I've talked about the obvious things.
Thank you very much. Let's get the word in then. So, because I think if this becomes a very technical conversation, because assisting communities in mitigating community impacts is a bit like saying, if my understanding is, if it wasn't there, there'd be no community impact, negative or positive. But actually, by definition, once you put a major development on, it has an impact, a material impact of some description. And the purpose of the money and the whole concept here is to say there is then money available which can help mitigate for that development. And actually, on a scale, you're basically saying, Councillor Frenchman, you can use or extract as much money from that process as you can, but ultimately it's still about mitigating the impact of the development. So I think that wording still, I would support the wording. I think it gets us around the semantics of it, but still gives you the opportunity to discuss it.
Mitigating the negative impact is
I think someone simply said mitigating community. Can you reword? Can you give us the word?
I suggested clarity within DDC as to the aims of affected communities regarding the mitigation of development impact. That's what it's simply said.
Mitigation of development impact.
Okay.
I understand where you might say, well, actually, if somebody comes along, they're going to build 100 houses, then while we're at it, we might as well get extra stuff that we didn't have before. But that might, but once you get deeper, that I don't know whether that's permitted or not. But I think, can we just change the wording to that?
Yeah.
To get through, thank you. I've got a task for Wendy. Wendy, could you follow it so we can edit the scoping document, please? So Simon, can you say what the recommendation is again, which will change it to and get some Council Frenchman's file?
We're looking at task aims.
We're looking at panel purpose and value of work, isn't it?
I was suggesting that Councillor Frenchman's drafted reworded to clarity within DC as to the aims of the affected communities regarding the mitigation of development impacts.
Okay, so it's this one here at the top, task panel. Okay. So can we just have that word again? I'd like to get some of this now before the meeting, but I understand where we are. You okay to put that at the end? Right. Can we just take that again, Simon?
Yes, certainly. Clarity within DDC as to the aims of the affected communities regarding the mitigation of development impacts.
And remove the first comment. The first item.
Yes.
Yeah.
So to help our communities goes.
Yes. And assist community.
Sorry, no, I don't want that one.
You don't want that one?
No, I don't want that going.
Can we? Would it help you if we said to achieve community benefits from such applications?
I don't understand what the officer's objection to it is at all. Because are you saying that we shouldn't achieve maximum benefits for our communities?
I'm saying that because the Council of the Local Planning Authority, it has to be careful to remain within the legislation and the national policy, which means if we are seen to be going and pursuing objectives which are beyond those permitted...
This is not for us to pursue, this is for the parishes to pursue.
The recommendations involve proposals relating to the Council's constitution and so on. If your proposed task outputs were guidance for parish councils on how they can better mobilise themselves, then it would not appear that you were seeking to manipulate the planning system in an appropriate way.
I take exception to you accusing me of manipulating the planning system. I'm fully aware of our legal limitations and we're working within that. But there are opportunities outside of that for our parish councils individually to speak to developers to gain more benefit.
Can I just make one quick comment on that? So what happens, Barry, if one of your parish councils comes along to say to you, look, we can do school on this, you're on planning committee, help us with this.
I say no because I'm not allowed to do that.
Yes, okay, okay, so you're straight, Barry, but there are others that may sort of go ahead with that, and then you've got that interest of being a member, of being a planning committee, and also you want the benefits as well. It's like the town centre development.
But it's not saying those benefits are illegal in any way. If a developer's willing to give it, irrespective of the legal limits, then we should accept it.
Not if you're a planning committee member.
No, when I say us, I'm talking about DDC. If we get an application that provides us with benefits that are greater, let's say, than the set legal limits, and they're happy to give us that, then we should be accepting it.
There is nothing to stop a parish council, sorry Chairman, there's nothing to stop a parish council negotiating with a developer if it wants to anyway.
That's what I'm saying.
There is everything to stop district councillors from doing it.
I'm not talking about district councillors.
Well, if parish councils want to do it, then they've always been able to do it.
But they haven't, because what they've been precluded is this this planning department keeps things secret. They don't tell the parishes until an application turns up, and it's too late.
No, again,
I will argue
Chairman,
to
I'm sorry.
a lot of times. I'm going to say this is not a relevant argument to have here.
Yeah.
This is an argument we will have when we interview you.
But along comes Mr. Developer. He doesn't want to give the parish everything. He wants to talk to the district about it in private. So the parish is not going to hear about
So
it.
every other district council or other planning department throughout the country that allows parishes into pre-application negotiations is doing it wrong, are they?
I am not aware that everybody does.
That's
Well, some do, and I want to look at best practice for that.
Okay, that makes sense. I think the fact of the matter is we have different perspectives on this, and we need to get to some common understanding. But in terms of that task, panel, and purpose and value of the work, I think from a broad perspective, we shouldn't shy away from helping our communities to achieve benefit. But I think from what you're saying, Simon, is from a legal technical perspective, we should be objective about it. But then how does that work with the fact that you have a pre-application meeting? Because that would say we do want to gain benefit from it. So how do we reconcile these two?
I wonder, Chairman, of course I'm not trying to be too active play here, but whether a way of resolving this might be to retain Councillor Frenchman's first paragraph and add at the end of it, without compromising the integrity of the planning system.
That's fine, yeah.
That's good compromise. Okay, so everybody's happy. And don't forget, folks, this is only the scoping document. We've got plenty of time for debate later, but let's not worry.
I'm sure we'll have all this.
And some of it I'd like to do away from the meeting.
I'm hungry as well.
Without compromising
The integrity of the planning system.
the integrity of the planning system. Thank you.
Chairman, are you finished on that subject? No, on that subject.
Well, on that particular one there, yes we have, but I want to take it from the top in the box because of the editing, that'll be the document we have, and it'll be the document we sign off on to get to the
Because I am going to disappear after that one, with respect, I'm hungry.
You have to be well food. Right, can we take it from the top where you've got your box?
So I've got to help our communities affected by MPAs that achieve maximum community benefits from such applications without compromising the integrity of the planning system.
Agreed for paragraph 1. Thank you, Councillor Frenchman. Yeah. And paragraph 2, can you take us from what you have there, please?
I want clarification on that. I've got clarity within DDC as to and then I need
the aims of the affected communities regarding the mitigation of development impacts.
Okay, and you're happy with that, Councillor Frenchman? That still gives you plenty of framework to manoeuvre in. Good. Thank you for that one. Wendy's got that. She'll capture it. She'll
One last one, going back, because Simon brought up a different one. Going to the task objectives, number 4. If we just put number 4, involvement of parishes in, and take out development negotiations completely.
That gets around that technical issue again. So the idea is here you're simply asking a very wide question: what happens currently? What happens in other locations? Is there a best practice model? What do we recommend as a way forward for us? It could be nothing changes. It could be some recommendations. Thank you, Councillor Frenchman. Councillor Robinson, very quickly, what do you reckon?
Can I just go back to paragraph 2 there, Chair? I'm still not quite happy with that wording, because to mitigate development impact per se would suggest that if the impact was a good thing, you want to mitigate. You wouldn't want to mitigate something that was positive, surely.
It depends. I mean, positive or negative might be a public perception. I mean, there are probably many examples. Some might say it's positive. I'm gonna not take that one on board because Councillor Frenchman, who's chair of this scoping document panel, is happy with it. So I don't open a can of worms on that one. But having said that, please feel no. I don't want to get into the semantics. Let's move on to the next one.
Chairman, I just have one other thing I ought to propose on behalf of the committee manager, which is that in the document sources to be reviewed, in addition to the DDC constitution, should be added the national document probity in planning.
Oh, right, okay.
Okay,
I wasn't aware of that one.
Excellent. That kind of links into the early one. So,
you can't take right.
Yes.
We've got to be incorruptible. So, Wendy, you have that document added.
Brevity and planning.
Yeah, please give it the full description, and which I'm sure you can get from Simon. And the final one is remove Richard, add Keith Fursfield and Simon Bowers. Excellent. Any other changes?
Could I just clarify on point 4,
Yep.
involvement of parishes in, and then you take it out, development.
Yeah, that's correct. Period. Stop.
Thank you very much.
Good. Well, that wasn't quite as painful as it could be. Council Osborne, if you
I
know
enjoyed every minute of it.
I'll be in touch, Steve, to come and talk to you.
Yeah, formally from this
And
committee.
you can say exactly all that again, and we'll take notes this time.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thank you.
I enjoyed every minute of it.
Great to see you. Please come again.
Well, not too often.
We've normally steered clear of your committee, actually.
Well, you come to ours now and again, don't you?
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you very much indeed. Much appreciated. Jolly good. Right, that one's dealt with, apart from some scheduling. Councillor Frenchman, what do you think? Can you get us an interim by the 8th of November? Gives you a month to basically get a report, but it's only like a 1 or 2 page, I guess. Or do you want a bit longer?
I think I want longer.
You might, well, if you had conversations there. Can you give us a verbal on the 8th of November, please?
Yes.
And can we have an interim or the final on February? Keep our options.
I'm hoping that we should get the final one by then. It's just that I've got to arrange a lot of stuff, and I think that's the difficulty.
Well, it's certainly going to be an interesting one. We're doing our job properly if we have a little bit of debate. That's the point. Get the public to make this. But of course, we're operating as long as we're operating in a legal framework.
Oh, can I say one other thing? I've had 4 councillors who are helping me.
Oh, can we have those names on?
Yes.
So
That's those.
we've got, and also please add on the corresponding. Thank you very much. So we've got Councillor Wesley. Thank you. Councillor Carter. Councillor Irving Swift. And Councillor Fraser Allen. Also, some new people there.
Yes.
Councillor
I think 1 or 2 of them, well, certainly Fabienne, she doesn't know much about the way that the council operates, so I might include her, even if we appear to be slightly mob-handed, just to give us some insight when we talk to officers and portfolio holders, even if she doesn't say anything.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just so she gets a feel for
it as well. Yeah. Councillor Pritchard, is this something you're interested in as well?
It is actually, yeah.
I thought it might be actually. Can we put Councillor Pritchard
Yeah,
there?
that's not a problem, yeah.
Good, excellent. Well, that was super. Let's have more of that kind of debate, and thank you, Simon, for your input. And I think with all these things, we need to be constructively critical, but just be careful about some of our language, actually. And I know there was a couple of comments I changed on there as well, barrier and transparency. It may not always be a transparency or secrecy issue, it may be a lack of communication issue. Good, thank you for that one. Next one is, it says here, present the rolling work programme. Well, I think unless there's any burning issues, we'll move on. I think most of what we're looking at is on here, that's the whole point. The main purpose of bringing it in paper I've concluded tonight is writing on it myself. The next one is firework regulations. Now, this came about because of contact I had had, and I think other people may have had as well, from members of the public. So I said perhaps this needs some scrutiny, but if not, let's see what officers come back with. So at the last meeting, Tony agreed to come back with something, and in that case, you've got the document in your paper, which is the current regulatory framework, and Simon's going to give us a quick update on this. You never know what you're going to get asked, isn't it?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman. I think this matter is entirely straightforward. It's set out very clearly in the note which Tony and Co have prepared. Happy to answer any questions there may be.
Looks pretty straightforward, and he fits on one page. It's a classic one page. Any comments or Councillor French?
I'm guessing, I mean, it's points made here, but it's very transient, and the time you come, if you are being statutorily nuisanced by it, by the time you reported it, it's finished, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, do they take like retrospective action?
Well, the general response to sanitary nuisance is to issue an order saying stop it. Well, clearly if you want to stop, that's a limited use. As the note notes, if people persist, for example, a pub that decides to hold a fireworks every Friday night or something, then obviously there's the opportunity to take enforcement action.
But generally there isn't if it's, the Scouts doing a firework display or something like that. Thank you.
So, before I've got a question of Councillor Wesley. Before I come to him, I was attending a town council meeting last night, and the issue of Southbrook came up, community concern about public safety, and part of that issue was around fireworks and kind of various devices being set off and so on. That might well be one of those cases where it's a statutory nuisance but it's continuing, and I wonder what I guess it'll be a matter for the police perhaps, but let's take Councillor Winston's point.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's obviously fireworks is a different one, because if somebody has a 21st birthday and lets off fireworks at the wrong time, they're not going to have another 21st birthday, so that's done and dusted. But just as a for instance, we've got some people that live by us in Ashby Fields that just absolutely tend to love fireworks, and periodically decide they're going to set them up. Well, they set them up about 20 times a year. It doesn't actually bother me, but I know it does bother some people. I'm just saying, so that is the sort of things that we need to be looking at. Regarding your point, Chair, I think that's more than a statutory nuisance. I think they're probably more than fireworks. I think they're more like homemade explosive devices that we were talking about there.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Sorry, one second. Actually, have you finished your point?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Wesley.
I was just going to say that I don't think the law would agree with you when it comes to 20 times a year. I think they wouldn't think that to be a statutory nuisance. I don't know if Simon might be able to assist on that.
I think it's a very useful answer, but it will depend on the intensity, the length, and all the other factors. Absolutely. So, if there was a problem, then by all means you could report environmental health. It'll probably be monitored diary and go from there. And the professional opinion of an environmental health officer is not conclusive, but it's highly persuasive to a court one way or the other.
Thank you, Simon. That was a classic Simon Bowers answer. I mean, that's the spirit.
Just depends.
Thank you. Let's have one person. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. I just wonder, where do we get the 120 decibels from? Because that's quite quiet for a firework. So it's really
Yes, actually. Simon, let's see what you can deliver on this topic. So 20 decibels.
120.
120. Yeah, sorry, that is quite loud. Isn't it?
Yeah, I was saying it's quite loud.
It's a lot of it's going to be impossible to
working with in the engineering industry, a handheld cordless power tool is 80 to 85 decibels. So if you're grinding or cutting, that's 80 to 85 decibels. So 120, and we manage all our power tools in our industry. It used to be 90 to 95.
And you've been wearing protective ear.
You actually don't notice it when you use it, but it's a long-term effect. But the firework is something that happens over there and makes you jump over here. A handheld machine at 80 to 85 degrees is something you use here on a daily basis. So I don't quite know how far away you need to be to measure it, but it does seem quite low when it's over there.
Because you hear a bang very quickly, it would be kind of louder than a corresponding drill. So I guess some of this is quite technical anyway.
The point we've made, the decibel scale is logarithmic, which means every 10 decibels the amount of energy in the noise is doubled. So if you're going from 85 to 120, I'll probably do the maths, but you have multiplied the energy by quite a few times. And so that will be limited, partly on safety grounds and partly on immediacy grounds. But frankly, whatever of it is, that's the law.
So basically, that's the law, and you have to have some measuring device to do it accurately, etc. Councillor, did you have another comment? Right, okay, so this was, the purpose of this is a very quick turnaround, was we had some inquiries and we wanted to look at it and see if there's any further work required. Can we conclude that we're happy with this, or do we want to do some further work on it? Well, it seems pretty straightforward.
It's fine, yeah.
Fine, okay. So we thank Tony for that, and basically the briefing is noted, no further action required. The next item on the agenda is we're moving off the core work programme now, although we do need to stay on the core programme for a moment actually. Just 1 moment. I know we don't, it comes a bit later. I've got a couple of extra items on the agenda here. One is called proactive maintenance and appearance of street scenes. The chairman to discuss, that's me. As a ward member for Abbey South, I seem to be receiving a number of inquiries on a regular basis, or conversations and feedback from people about the appearance of the town. And I know we feel like we've discussed this many times in various different fora, etc. And we're not only talking necessarily about overhanging undergrowth, this kind of thing, but also about the general upkeep and maintenance, be it street furniture, or even where perhaps work has been done and it hasn't been made good afterwards. So I have a whole catalogue of these type of issues. Speaking to other members of the council and conversations and feedback, I think there are other issues as well, similar to this but replicated by others. And therefore I, as a chairman, put this on the agenda to say, is there a broader issue here around the overall appearance of the district, particularly when you get down to the kind of villages, etc., or even maybe the roads, which we could look at in more detail. Really to see about how we approach those issues. Should we take a more proactive stance on the issues? Or are we happy with the current status quo, which is where we get complaints and then they get fixed? Or is it actually we need a kind of a more root and branch type approach to look at this? And even to the point you might say, how does it impact upon brand Daventry? Is there a problem here about perception of the upkeep? To give you a very quick example, I was stood outside Waitrose very early this morning. There was a girl sat on the seats there, and she was from Market Harbour, and she says Market Harbour is so much nicer. And I said, you know how many people say that? Shem could invite her as well. So she was just a passing person in the town, saying that she didn't think much of the town, and she liked Market Harbour. You'll know, Simon, you've often seen me stand there, smell like perch, for surveying my ward. So I wanted to open up to the floor, say, is there more work that needs to be done? Do we need to cast our eye over this topic? I don't want to be parochial about this in the sense it's not only about the town, but I think that's where a lot of the attention is drawn to. Recently, again, when I was perched up in the town, I saw homeless people out on Bowen Square there, and again, that's for another topic later. But the whole thing generally feeds into what people are feeling about the district. Go to Councillor Frenchman first. Any comments or thoughts on this topic?
The first one is that I think it's very important what the town and the village looks like. But isn't there a corporate thing, a measure that says about people's perception of the cleanliness of the streets? Is that the same thing, or are you talking about a more general?
I'm talking about more than that, actually, and this is the point. I'm not talking about only cleanliness. I'm not only talking about upkeep and example, right? So
tattiness, as I would call it.
Tattiness, but also more than tattiness about the upside, a bit like your mitigation and benefits. So example, right? So I'm dropping my son off to school at Bronson this morning, walking back up the hill, and perhaps this is overhanging vegetation from a gardener, but actually there's actually brambles hanging right down into the path. I wouldn't want to do that at night time. And again, that might be the person who owns a garden next to it. There should be upkeeping this. That's probably simple to deal with. But and again, Councillor Wesley, you'll know when we've been door knocking in the past, it's again about general upkeep. And it's not really acceptable to say to people, you have to complain and we'll fix it. And we know also it's about Amy, so there's an interface there, but it's about more than that. It's about general respect. If you walk around the town, I bet you could log loads of things, even if it's down to, are we being proactive enough on the scaffolding on the high street, for instance, that's popping up, and those kind of things. So it's a general feel and ambience of the town. That's what I'm looking at.
I think one of the problems is, and I'm sure we've all seen it, is where you have a nice litter bin and somebody drops litter by it, or they throw it out the car. That's a big problem in villages, especially on the sort of more main roads.
On the main height, the trunk roads.
I mean, obviously, when I lived in Stratton, I would run from Stratton to Creed, which is along the A5199, and there was always no end of McDonald's wrappers there. And I'm thinking, I don't even know where the nearest McDonald's is, but somebody's obviously thought, well, there's nothing going on here, I'll just lob it out the window. So I think that there is a physical aspect to this, which is things, we could tidy it up. But there is also a slightly more deeper aspect, which is nothing to do with us, which is people's attitudes and the fact that the parish councils have to get on to people to complain about overhanging vegetation and people being pushed off the pavement because somebody's just not bothered to cut their hedge and they're having to push the pushchair into the road. But that's not something we can do anything about, I feel, unless you have some sort of generic campaign through Daventry Calling or through parish councils to say, we did one for the Queen's birthday, didn't we?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, but I think even then it's deeper than that. I mean, you could identify the core areas which a lot of people get annoyed about. But then ultimately it is about civic pride, isn't it, at the very base of it? And the fact that if you have more pride in the civic, then more people are going to behave better. That's a very simple philosophy. But so I think you could start categorising and saying, it's about litter, it's about vegetation, and straight away a lot of those come straight back to environmental portfolio holder. And we could have her and say, we'd have the same story as we had before, which is we need to do more when we get the contract. But it's deeper than that, I think.
It is.
And it's about, again, this goes into yours, Councillor Pritchard, about empty commercial properties opposite the town council. You've got those buildings there. It's a general tidiness, I think, of the district.
So, just one quick one. One of the things that we could perhaps influence is engendering a community sense of well-being by getting groups of people who are like-minded to what you're thinking about, especially in some of these estates, and get them to have some sort of pride in it by helping them in some way, providing tools or whatever it is for them to help themselves.
Well, again, that's interesting because again at the town council meeting I attended last night, there was somebody talking about Sept. The community representative was there, and they think they've gone so deeply the other way that there were even people saying they're scared to leave the houses, which is again a kind of policing matter as well. But again, it's all that spiral of civic pride, I think, at the heart of it. Let's take some other comments and we'll come back to Councillor French. Well, let's go to Councillor Wesley first. I'll come to you, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I think it's a valid point, and it's a really, really difficult one. But basically, there's lots of shabby aspects of Daventry, particularly Daventry Town Centre. And we've got a portfolio hold here. We've got Love Daventry brand, and we're saying, brand isn't important. If we're going to have a brand that's an important thing, you've got to live and die by that brand, and you can't have Love Daventry and then not love Daventry. And I feel a little bit sorry for Councillor Howard that he's going around putting up posters and sort of trying to get something off the ground. And I do actually think you're being chopped off at the feet.
Undermined because of the actual appearance.
Because it actually makes people. This is a horrible thing to say, but it actually makes people laugh and feel let down. I think it's like, what are these people doing? Do they not understand that I've just had to fight through a bramble patch on a main car park in the town? And as a councillor you report it, but really people shouldn't have to be reporting things like that every 10 minutes. We should have some sort of auditing system of what we're responsible for and what isn't being done, and get it fixed. The reporting is not particularly easy. I've said this before to Councillor Howard. It's not particularly easy. Again, I asked my wife to do it the other day, and she goes, "How do I do it?" It's on the website. Where do I go? What do I do? Oh, it didn't bring up the right postcode. Oh, how's the mapping? How do you put down a street name when it's not a street? You've got pathways. You've got various parts on the railway line, bits off. And yeah, we have got some community groups in Daventry, but Daventry as a town is quite disparate. It's not a village, but there are things going on here where there's serious litter picking going on and serious estate intervention. But these people do want support. But I think part of the danger is as well when they start doing it, they think, oh, that's being done now, so nobody has to do anything else. And it's like you almost expect the extras to be done then. I mean, I know I've reported, damage to play equipment, and I reported it. Somebody ripped up a piece of play equipment. It was still there. I've reported it's still not been put back in place. It's still sitting there, and it's quite repairable. It just needs bolting back down. I've gone and rescued it 2 or 3 times and put it to one side, and then I go down again the next day, and somebody's tried to throw it at the park bench because it weighs about 4 tons, and let's go and smash it up. And it's endless little tiny things, and cracked pavements, broken. It's like we've got the block paving up through the town with the ramps. It's all patched up and broken. Love Daventry. It doesn't look loved, and I think we've either got to do one thing or the other. But I do think we should have a system of being proactive and maybe even enforcement on litter, real enforcement on litter, instead of just encouraging people to go and pick it up. Let's go around with people with jackets on picking it up and telling and helping people as well, not just facilitating them to pick it up. Actually get out there and do it.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to stop you there actually, because I think that's okay. I think you're actually getting into sort of tactics and so on, which is helpful for later perhaps. Councillor Robertson, I'm going to come to you because you had a comment. Then I'm going to go to Councillor Howard actually as the portfolio for this campaign.
Basically, I was going to say that I think there are 2 things to say really. Firstly, I do think that a campaign, perhaps an annual one, perhaps more often, would be very useful. Because it does engender a certain amount of pride in one's locality. Secondly, I'm a country bumpkin, and basically it certainly isn't just a Daventry problem, it's a district problem.
Which is why I put it as a Daventry issue, and rather be parochial about it. I'm sure you go to any village across the district and have some issues. I think most of it,
areas in Crick, for instance, where I represent, are an absolute disgrace, and I need to talk to Simon just a bit after the meeting. It's not for this meeting,
there's an interesting point. So you're saying it's a disgrace when you talk to Simon afterwards. I mean, I'm sure Simon is inundated with these kind of issues.
Sure he is. It's just about he's responsible for something, that's all I want.
Just something brief.
Let's go to Councillor Howard. We'll kind of reach a conclusion what we do next summer, but let's get some more into this.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments on this. Very much the Daventry person that's been in the portfolio role. My experience is this is an education problem we have. It's a respect problem. It's a policing problem, seriously, because I don't believe we do police very well. And when we do, we don't actually follow up, so we don't know what's happening with the policing. If we policed harder and better as a council and as a local police force, then we would get a slightly different response. I think regarding when people were allowing their dogs to mess, I believe we've only prosecuted 1 person, and the fine was quite ridiculous, but that's the law, I'm afraid. We don't prosecute people enough. We need to make people feel very proud of the town and district. I don't find the villages to be as bad. Sorry, Ian, but
some are.
Yeah, some of them are self-policing because the older generations of the villages seem to look after, and the youth respect the older. In the town, it's very different. There's very little respect of the actual police. Never mind, so the youth don't respect. So it's not a youth problem. It's also an older generation. I actually stopped a taxi driver who will be named as from the district who chucked stuff out of his car. I picked it up, gave it back to him. He said, "Thank you very much." I must have dropped it. So it's an education thing, but it's empowering enough people. And again, it's about cost. We can't. Where does that cost from to enforce our officers within the council to go out there and do it? Because I'm not big enough and brave enough looking at some of the youth going around this town to actually confront them myself. Although I was confronted when I was a child by an older generation, so it's a generation thing.
It's interesting actually, Ken, to interrupt you, there's kind of like a whole set of issues there which is about community behaviour.
Yes.
But some of it I think is, and I agree with that, and it's kind of almost like defining the problem is quite challenging. But then on the other side of it, I think you've got things that aren't community behaviour because they're things that are simply plant behaviour, quite frankly, things growing. But there's other things like lack of care and attention to detail. And what about those kind of issues? So, I'll give you one example. I was working on that ward where you've got the irons around the trees outside the bar, and it took months to get that fixed. And I had one particular complainant in who was of the council, and my initial response was, "You were on the council for these years. What did you do about it?" Which is probably not the best response, but it's valid. But actually, and he's not here now, unfortunately. But the point is right, isn't it? It's like, what proactive approach do you have to that kind of attention to detail? Maybe there isn't. Maybe I don't know. So things like that you can nip in the bud that gives people the extra civic pride on top. So it's more like that. I don't think it's only about the community. I think it's about we have to take more leadership on some of these issues.
Yeah, I think the issue is with talking to the town, so the village parish council or councils, they have a slightly different approach to the town council. I'm looking to have a meeting at some point. Myself and Councillor Reddy, we spoke about this with me personally having a meeting with the clerk. The difference is the money is spent, with the villagers on looking after their own greenery. It's not with the town. So remember, we need to discuss there's so many things to talk about. As privet and trees, yes, we need to go to the houses within the town and raise these issues of privets and trees. I don't know how we're going to do that, but it's a discussion I think we need to have. So I think if we do a scoping document regarding the reporting process, we are actually talking at the moment with the comms team about maybe having a Google map and going, that's where it is, and you drop a pin and you're looking to find somewhere, so you can drop a pin and say that's where the problem is. Because when we do have our own special cameras that we take photographs of, Amy Enterprise don't know where we are because it's longitude and latitude, and it tells them exactly where we are. We can even tell them where we are on a postcode, and because they're based in Liverpool, they don't know where Daventry is. So the cameras don't actually physically work. So what we need to do is we need to probably go to a simple Google map on the internet and go, and the people can just drop this pin in. Do you know what I mean when you're looking for somewhere on the internet? So that's something that we are talking about.
Could you ask for multiple locations as well at one point?
Yeah.
Because people go on a walk and it's like 5 things. To have to go in and out and in and out to go and walk. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's. I think there's a whole load of things. It feels to me that we definitely know there are. At the very least, do we think there is an issue that needs scrutiny? Even though we need to define how to approach it.
I can answer that. Yes. Because I want to promote Daventry as a place to come work, live and play and enjoy, as one of our colleagues who's now no longer a councillor who's said it for the last 20 years. So.
And you're a town board member. I mean, you must hand on heart know when you go into town. You don't really feel like you can have Daventry.
No, and this is why I want to push it, and I would support, although I can't work, and I'm happy to give advice and talk to the town council of how, simple things, painting the benches, chewing gum, cigarette butts, minor things, so minor that it's ridiculous that we're even talking about it.
Thank you. Let me turn to Councillor Pritchard for a minute. Now, you, when I go to Braunston, in fact I saw him today, you have a very active litter picker in Braunston that does, looks like he generally keeps on top of the job. So this is kind of model. I think you always seem to have quite a bit of community pride in the village. Although it still surprised me how much rubbish you still get, the dog fellow we spoke about earlier. Are there any kind of lessons from Braunston that we could share a bit later on with this particular piece of work, perhaps? Or any,
I've listened to everyone's comments, really interesting comments. I think we have to be careful not to keep naming Braunston as the dog excrement capital of the world.
That's your word,
Because to be fair, there's only certain areas, towpath, back of the fields, jetty fields, those areas. In fact, the village is very well maintained.
Yeah.
The High Street, Church Road, biggest areas, Greenway, up to the school, there isn't a problem. You had one overhanging bramble, which is going to be reported when we get back, but that's how it happens. You see something,
you report it, you get action.
And we've got a gentleman called Dennis who sorts it out. And the village has got a large, got an award for a large village trophy presented the other day, because it is about appearance, Everybody does know each other, even though, there's a fair amount of people there, but they haven't got that migration of people leaving the area. There's that kind of respect, and bins are overflowing because they're used. And there isn't that problem.
So there's a different issue there, isn't it? Bins are overflowing because they're used, so are they empty enough? Yeah. But no, I wasn't singling out, but actually I'm going to generally praise him for the village. Let's go to Councillor French for first, then Councillor, then we'll wrap this on up.
Two quick examples of sort of best practice. One is at Chapel Brampton. They've employed a litter picker, a young lad who after school or whenever at the weekends goes around the village weekly litter picking, and they pay him a few quid. I mean, literally pennies, I don't know, whatever it is.
Hopefully not too young and above the minimum wage.
He is, because he's had training, he has high vis because of walking down the roads, and he's had proper safety training and
and he's
properly
the job.
Properly he's got grabbers and gloves and the lot. And in Spratton we had problems like that, so we employed a village handyman on an ad hoc basis. So every time we got a complaint, we just sent it to him and we just paid it, whether it was for an Amy problem or a highways problem. I'm talking about things like collecting leaves, because they collect in places and in the autumn they become slippery on the pavements. We cleared them away ourselves. We didn't wait for highways, because you go blue in the face reporting it to Street Doctor or whatever the latest incarnation happens to be. So a lot of villages have taken on board these things. And I don't know if the town council can do the same sort of things, but it's a much bigger area, isn't it?
It's massive. It is massive. And I just want to say, I mean, when we talk, I don't want to demonise people in Daventry on this, because I mean, I go around Ashby Fields and I pick up litter all the time, and it just get quite demoralising. I've said this before, it gets demoralising. It's even more demoralising when they come along and mow cans up, and it's just, and they're all, so you've got 40 bits of litter to pick up instead of 3. It's just absolutely ridiculous, which comes around to doing it actually properly, because it makes it much harder for everyone to actually get anywhere near it. But picking up litter and putting it in the bins, you actually see what people are filling the bins, that people are using the bins. It's a minority of idiots that are causing this problem, and it's heartbreaking. I mean, I see other people going around picking litter up as well. There is some good community spirit around the town. I saw a lady on Sunday morning doing it at 8:30. She was going around with the flag. There is community spirit. Let's not demonise everybody. There's good stuff, but if we just push it a little bit further, those people want to know that we're doing our bit as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Frenchman, before I come to you,
I'm just saying he's getting the Gusher on board to run a campaign.
Yeah, it feels to me that's kind of one level of it, but there's something more. But maybe that's the point of the...
Well, it's a multi-level.
It's a multi-level, absolutely. Councillor Pritchard.
I mean, it's ironic, really. I work in Coventry, and it's about monitoring and enforcement. I mean, you drop a scrap of paper, remember, you are pounced upon by a council warden in a blue uniform. You accidentally have to, put your own argument forward that it dropped out of your hand as you put it into the bin. I've seen that happen. They are vicious. There is zero tolerance. And to be fair, the streets of Coventry look quite good.
Yeah. Except for the bit around the old monastery, which I walked around recently. There's like needles there. But yeah, I agree with what you said. There's always somewhere else.
There's a trouble with this.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of scary that day. Okay, well let's bring this to a conclusion. Sam, you've been scribbling there. Did you have any inputs, insights?
Well, I was taking notes of what members said, because it was helpful to understand the perspective right across the district. But just a few thoughts that may be of some value. Obviously, this is an area which has multiple responsible parties, which itself doesn't help. Yes. The district council is responsible for picking up litter, sweeping the streets, and indeed for prosecuting those who drop the through. Otherwise, the county council is responsible for maintaining the highways, including the non-replacement of flat and all the rest of it. Street furniture is mostly the county council's, but some of it's ours. There is actually a bid going into this cycle for setting up a proper painting programme to put all the street furniture back in decent state and keep it that way.
That will make a big difference, to be honest.
So that may help. And as you'll be aware, council approved some additional resources, so we're going to employ a new landscape architect who will get us better control over what Amy are doing landscape-wise, and also prepare for the end of the Amy contract, where we are they're probably to have greater control over the landscape activities all around, which should help. And that's now less than 2 years away, which is a flyby. Another aspect of the post-AIM world is, and this has been offered quite widely to the parish councils, is to say if a parish council wants to take on and wants to develop the kind of work that's been talked about with local litter picking, then we would be happy to talk about devolving a chunk of the litter picking budget and say this is what DDC will have spent in this area, you have it, you add to it whatever you want, and you deal with it. Now, I would have thought that should be appealing to a number of parishes and perhaps also to some community groups in some areas. As of yet, other than Malton and Overston, we haven't had anyone come back and say they want to pick that up, but that may change. It may give some assistance.
I was just going to ask the question I was saving for you later, Simon, having discussed the who's responsible for what. Who is therefore responsible for cleaning up around the M1 Junction 18 area?
On the motorway itself and the slip roads, down to the giveaway lines on the roundabout, that is Highways England.
Right. The roundabout under it?
The roundabout under it. The litter is ours.
Well, right, there you go. So
the road surface is the county council.
Right.
So it depends where it is, but it will probably be us on Highways England. And we are aware there are serious problems down there, and we have been seeking to address them. There's also a particularly unpleasant issue with HGVs and labourers and what they leave behind.
Well, they do. And they're all foreign trucks as well. Anyway.
Well, Simon, so when you say we're seeking to do so, what does that mean?
It means in the short term, it means seeking to make sure Amy focuses on that area. Obviously, the longer term, when we have more direct control of the areas too.
Thank you. We need to conclude this so we can go to the next agenda item. It feels to me that we need to do something, but even if it's to bring together the disparate elements of it. Therefore, what I propose to do on this topic is, particularly as I'm ward member and I get quite affected by this issue as town member, I'll bring back to the table for the next one a scoping document, and then we'll take it from there as a piece of work. And it really be the focus on identifying the core elements and bringing it together. And I'd like to frame it within Brandon Daventry, actually.
Because just one aspect you're probably going to hope you would, and that is education in terms of knowing, so a parish or a town council knows who to complain to or report to for like Simon has just said, in that little area there's 3 or 4 different people.
What to do?
How to do it.
Yeah, and I think the first thing to identify is what are the issues that mean we lack pride, or ultimately don't buy into the brand, the love down the modern world. What stops us buying into that?
Mobile telephones.
And it could be any, all those things you mentioned, and some are caused by individuals. We've been through, I don't want to go for the whole lot. Now look, I'm happy to take that on, unless anybody else is desperate to get in. I can imagine Councillor Howard.
I think deterrent is one of the biggest cures of a lot of this, because, for instance, if there were CCTVs at the bottom of our part of the motorway and people drop litter, it's a bit like having a speeding fine. People used to slow down for cameras. Now that the cameras are back on the motorways, people are slowing down again. Because a £100 fine for doing 5 mile over on a motorway is pretty serious. And it is. You do change your behaviour, most definitely.
I mean, some of it is behaviour change. If you look at the original item on it, it's about street scenes. So it's not only about litter, it's not only about undergrowth, it's about upkeeping, and it is about street furniture and things like that. People, and for me, actually, some of those are fundamental in terms of building and maintaining pride, in actual fact. But I'll bring a scoping document back to the next committee, and we'll take it from there. Agreed? Mm-hmm. Thank you. Right. We're almost at reaching an hour again, which is, why is it quarter past 9? This is when we've been going 3 hours, isn't it?
I'm going to head off for a chair.
Yes, thank you. The next item on the agenda is, it always strikes me when we put these together, Wendy, it always looks like there's not much on there, and in 7 hours we come to a stop. I may even actually defer some of the items on the agenda this evening, actually, because we've spent quite a lot of time talking about some of these things. think we can do that, can't we? We'll come to that in a minute. Can DDC do more to support the case of homelessness in the district? I put this one on the agenda because I was increasingly concerned about a couple of issues. And one of them is here, we've got the incident, and you've got to be careful on here not to look at the specifics rather than focus on the general, but we've got this gentleman called David Reeve who apparently lives in his car, I'm sorry to mention this, in your village actually, in Braunston. Now, this is kind of not the picture in terms of building brand for Daventry. Also, in addition to this, I was in town again at my usual haunt a couple of weeks ago, and there was a couple outside Waitrose drinking. And it's one of those difficult situations because they're not meant to drink there, are they? But I wasn't going to go heavy-handed and say I'll go and call the police. I've done that before actually, outside the toilets, and I got told to, F off. But this is a different occasion, and I said, look, it's a summer's evening. I'm not going to go and tell the police, but please be quiet. And I handed them my card. I said, I know this is a bit of explore the story. These people are apparently living in the country park in a tent. Again, I've not seen them living in a country park in a tent, but the next day I got a call from the probation officer, the officer, not from DDC, who was looking after this person, and said, there's a Polish gentleman and this lady, and they've fallen on very hard times and in the tent. Now, what strikes me as a district councillor and also somebody who's been on the Consolidated Charity for a while is, within the national framework, I think there are things we can do, but the question I'd like to bring to scrutiny is then what we can do on these issues. And actually I'd like to, if I may, first of all turn to you, Councillor Pritchard, because I know this individual lives in your ward. So can you give us a bit more detail about that, what you were able to do, and etc., etc. And can we use that as a case study for what can and can't be done in these circumstances?
Yeah, I can provide quite a lot of information regarding this, but with the bounds of confidentiality.
Of course.
Knowing...
there might be limitations to what you can describe.
There is, but what I can do is generalise about things, knowing that this couple has received an awful lot of help from the village, especially from the parish, in terms of the Reverend Sarah and other people that attend the church.
Sorry, Chairman, I probably ought to. This is a public session and therefore recorded and available on this website. If you want to discuss this, it might be advisable to vote to go into closed session. Then you can excise it from the. I'm afraid it would force the member of the public to exit, which is unfortunate. But
I tell you what, can we keep it general then in terms of we'll come away from this issue, but
I'll say to do that.
Thank you, sir. That's very much helpful. So in general, if you have this kind of situation, what can we do as councillors?
So we receive lots of support from the community. There are individuals not too far away from here who've been instrumental in providing some support. I've received many emails. I've conversed with people regarding this matter, and very early on in my tenure as a councillor, I went straight to Maria Taylor to discuss directly, knowing what limitations there are. Those limitations can't go into any further, but in terms of how the council can or cannot help. It's unfortunate, and it provides somewhat of a conundrum because these people are vulnerable and they're between a rock and a very hard place without being able to access services because those services may not be forthcoming or available to them due to certain constraints. However, I do know that from that piece in the paper, that the community as a whole and outside of Braunston as well, the Daventry district have provided offers of support for them.
Okay, so we'll come back to that in a minute, because obviously the first stage is what can we do if we can do more. We need to set up a working group to look at this. Councillor Robinson.
Well, I personally think not, and the reason I say that is because it's not just a Daventry district problem. This is really a national problem. People slip through the legal net all the time, and what is required is an alternative to the legalistic approach that we might take. i.e. a charitable route. And okay, perhaps there is scope there for us to encourage charities and even support them, but I don't think we can do it directly.
But so the question is, I think, hence the agenda item, can we do more? And that's the fundamental question. So there will be a legal framework we have to operate in and there are constraints. But you must, if you have people come to you as district councillor and you say, I'm sorry, I can't do any more, does that feel right? Does that feel good enough?
Well, I appreciate what you say, Chair, but you have to draw a line somewhere, and we're a rating authority, and we raise money for particular purposes, but we have very strict guidelines in how we can spend that money, particularly on the disadvantaged, and so I think we have to make it indirect.
So here, that's the question. I don't really care about other local authorities, although we're all controlled by separate. We only concern about our own. But actually, if you're seeing stories in the paper about this, how does that again play into the Love Daventry? Yeah, I'll come to you in a second. Actually, Councillor French.
Thank you. A couple of points. Firstly, I think we're quite lucky, if you can say that our rate of homelessness is probably very low compared to generally around. So
do we have data on that? That's got to be a first question, empirical data.
I'm just going anecdotally, but I mean, if you go around any other town, you do see a lot more of what you consider to be homelessness. Secondly, I thought we had a statutory duty to provide for housing homeless people. And secondly, I think what Councillor Morgan's trying to get at, Ian, is not what can we do, but are we doing within what we're allowed to do enough? There may be more things that we're entitled to do that we're not doing.
And actually, more to the point, do we understand what we can do as councillors or we're informed? Let's go to Simon and I'll come back to you, Councillor.
Just in terms of statutory duty, we have a duty to assist those who are homeless and in priority housing need. Horrible legalistic expressions, but generally people with children, things like that, older people, obviously those under 18 and all,
particularly vulnerable.
Bowling County Council as children, but essentially people with particular vulnerabilities. If you're a healthy adult, the duty, I'm simplifying, but essentially the duty won't apply.
But that was my point, Chair. Basically, we take a legalistic approach to this kind of thing, and that isn't what's required. What's required?
I think that's the point, isn't it?
Is a more
it's a more nuanced,
sympathetic approach.
So the person in the high street says, "I'm sorry, I can't do any more for you. Go away, get stuff, go and dance." No, Councillor Pritchard, listen.
I'll answer one of your questions, which is, does it feel right? No, it doesn't. Should it be happening? No. So what can we do about it? Well, there's a legal framework, there's a moral framework, and our moral responsibilities as a society, what we should do, and those don't always marry very well. There are certain caveats that prevent help, things like being intentionally homeless, that's a caveat that prevents help. Do we get to the root of the problems that are cause for homelessness? I don't think we do. And although I discussed it with manager here, there's nothing else that could be provided for them. So what could we do? Could we have a contingency fund where we provide some kind of accommodation that might be appropriate for them, which is off plan as such in terms of the things that we do initially and the hierarchy that we follow for placing people?
There are other local authorities that I think have been, I think Councillor magazine recently featured one of them. I think it was Daventry. I did pull the piece out actually, and they'd said they'd been very proactive on this matter, and they've been there was a writer there. I've got it with me actually. I think you're right. I think it doesn't feel enough to say we're at our limitations on this one, particularly as it's not empirically we think it's not a massive problem, but therefore it feels like it should be easier where there are issues to get on top of those issues rather than having these stories. Now, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think you're right, there are probably some better examples.
DDH have some responsibility, or can we?
Great question. I don't know the answer to that. That's probably the point, isn't it? Simon probably does know the answer by the look of it.
In simple terms, no. But they have a duty to house those who they house as a responsible landlord. They've got no wider duty. There are some provisions under which they are potentially required to provide us with homelessness accommodation, but that's only people, again, who we have a need, a duty to provide.
So following on that, it may be, and I'm just guessing, that we could work in partnership with them to provide this contingency that you were talking about as a discretionary fund. You know,
and this is the sort of thing that the partnership could look at. Can I make? I'm going to make a proposal. Councillor Bridgeon, because you're writing up your document now, that's basically beyond investigation. Could I ask you to run a working group on this, please? And what I'd like to do is actually, as per before, come back to the next meeting with a scoping document on this specific question of do basically, as you can see here, DDC do more to support the case of homelessness in the district, and we'll assign that project to you. So are you happy to do that? With a scoping document to come back to the November.
I'm more than happy to. It's a bit obtuse at the moment.
Yeah, that's the point of the scoping document. You kind of refine it and say, okay, what keep within that framework. What are the options? How you can explore it, and then what might be. Basically, you've got the format here with the scoping document. That'd be great. Thank you, Councillor Harper.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sort of the questions I'd like in that document to be asked is like the people who are homeless. I know of one that was last year that was living in the churchyard, which I think our senior managers approached and didn't want to be looked after. They were happy doing their own thing and moved on. But some of the questions I'd like to ask are these people also out of work? Because we have more jobs in this district than we do people looking for work. So, is it because
one of the factors are underlying. I mean, that's the thing, because Councillor Pritchard, when you said that unemployment was really low, it kind of perhaps feeds into other things you were talking about, other projects as well.
Yeah.
Other data sets. What are the causes? And maybe
when I mean obtuse is that there'll be. Yeah. It's very difficult because it can't break any confidentiality.
Of course, we don't talk about individuals.
You don't, but then again, you can't sort of obtain that data face to face from individuals of your. So we haven't got many to. It's only a focus on a sample, and the sample is so small that I then have to be obtuse.
But for what data we have as objective?
Chairman, it just says, although the council is generally an open organisation, there are provisions, both in meetings and in written reports, that allow matters to be dealt with confidentially. Yeah. And personal data is, as you will well know, given your professional background, is highly protected in law, and so it can be secure. It won't be subject to FOI, for example. So if you need to do a confidential appendix or something like that, you should be fine.
I think it's the same as with trivial matters. I'm going to stop meeting for a moment. I'm duty bound to ask, because it's the 9:15, if we'd like to continue with the meeting or we'd like to stop.
How much more is there?
Well, actually, I'm going already as it is, because I think we've had a good hearty discussion with new people. I'm going to defer some of the items to the next one. We'll have to do it in turn. My intention is to basically cover off implementation activity to get the report back, and then I'm probably going to go through the agenda and ask if we'd like to defer each of the items, apart from item number 9. And that'll save us going crashing through midnight, okay?
Yeah.
And that's because, I'll come to it in a minute, but we're happy to continue.
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. Right, so, you're right in terms of choose on that one. Basically, we have to do what we can about breaching confidentiality, and so on, help on that one. This one here I've only brought to your attention. I've not said who it is or what it is, but it is in the public domain, so we know there's an issue, but I don't want to drill down specifically to that one, but actually look at the framework for how we deal with these things. And it may well, again, be actually when we get round to the reporting stage, it may be councillors don't understand what they need to do in these circumstances, or it could be there on what we could do in the past, looking at best practice, etc. And I'll track down that article and I'll send it across to you. And thank you for taking that on board, much appreciated. I think with your forensic eye, you'll bring some extra value to this project.
Just one last thing.
Yeah.
Am I able to have someone to consult with outside of the
yes, you can.
stakeholder?
Do what we said earlier. So you have a working group, a couple of people on that one, and then you can bring in various stakeholders. You don't have to bring them back to the meeting or anything, but you can sort of discuss it with people and get their views on the topic as well as interesting advice. Okay, good, thank you. Really appreciate that one. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is implementation activity. So I'm only going to take on here 6A and 6B and Summer Update Assembly. So for the sake of newer members, this is where we review activity that's been gone through council, and we have an implementation status, so that's where we track it through.
Thank you, Chairman. The first item is Rural Economic Roles Strategy, Task Panel Report. There are, let's check, 3 items there, all marked as amber currently because they are awaiting the employment of our Strategic Economic Development Officer. The good news I can give you post the writing of this actually is that we have now verbally offered that post, and therefore we should have someone in post by about November, and then we'll crack on with these.
Now, does that mean basically, in this case, amber means 0 have been implemented at this point in time?
Amber means we expect to implement it, but it isn't done yet.
Great, that's fine. So from our very crude rolling work programme, we say 0 implemented at this point in time, but that's why we have this as well to people on new ones. Thank you. And the next one?
The next one is the customer satisfaction to low response rates surveys. This is the measure we talked about earlier, the customer satisfaction measure, and that again, in the categorisation Tim has outlined, would be no progress yet, simply because the corporate plan is due for renewal at the start of next year. We are working towards that, and that will be taken on board as part of that process.
Great, thank you. So that's 0 implemented at this point in time. That's okay. Don't worry about my abrupt language. It kind of helps us, but we understand that. Now, the next item is number 7. Now, when we agreed this, I knew this was going to give us a lot of work in a couple of years' time. Basically, what we agreed to do was to do a 1-year post-implementation review of all of the things that have been implemented. So what we do is we track them on the rolling work programme, and we say 1 year after they've been implemented, then we'll have a look at the implementation of those and how it's going. And you'll see, because of the way we signed off a lot of things and they got implemented at a particular point in the cycle, this gives us a lot of work to do. So item A, B, C and D, which is assignment 5, 6, 11 and 12, you remember that rolling work programme gives specific assignment numbers, there's a unit reference number. This means we have 4 projects we need to review. Now, what I'm minded to do, because it's now 9:30, I might next time it might tip the agenda the other way around, Wendy. I'm going to ask if we can take these on block and defer them all to the next meeting. It won't make any difference if we do them or not this time. We can always assign them next time, because it may well be that each one's only a couple of days' work for somebody or a day's work, and I'm not looking for a big effort. Basically, a quick review, and we say, has it been implemented? Is it effective, and has it been sustained, basically? And some of those, if you look at assignment 12, corporate strategic plan, the reporting format, if you look in your document, you can see that it just talks about the recommendations had been implemented, and we say, is that actively happening, yes or no, and then we bring it back to the meeting. So, are we happy to defer those to the next meeting for action? Yes, Chairman. Great, everyone's going to have to assign that, thank you. Wendy, could you please put them at the beginning of the section 5 next time, please? Great. So, that's how you get work done, use defer. I don't really like doing it, actually. However, I was very keen to set off some new projects. I think we did good. So, deferred, I'll be on the beginning of the next one. However, what I do want to look at is who we should invite to the next meeting. Now, yes, before I get there, actually, I want to recap on... Thank you, it's good to have you. Item agenda number 8 is to recap on meeting deadlines. At the back of your deck, there is this table. We put this table in the first time last meeting because we wanted to focus you on the deadlines you have to meet in order for your document to be on the meeting agenda. So we did this working backwards. So basically the date of the meeting is the S9 meeting. And what it tells you on the table is if you want to have your papers presented in the 8th of November meeting, you have to have them submitted to the SMT with me on copy by the 7th of October. This is really important because, like other councillors, I also have a day job, and it means that I don't get to look at my emails every day. And therefore, what is really important is you send it to the officers with Wendy on copy, and actually Wendy will make sure you'll know it's coming, and I'll know it's coming, but the SMT can go and look at the documents and give feedback on it. If you send it to me, sometimes I won't answer my email for a week, and I sometimes do it in batches. I'm particularly fond of Sunday mornings very early, and that's when that works for me. So I do more in one go. So that's how I'd like it done. So it's really important. Don't send it to me. Send it to the SMT. Say crack on with it, but copy me in.
Should we not just send it to Wendy?
Or you can send it to Wendy.
I prefer to do that because then it makes sure it gets to the right people.
Okay. We can do that. That's fine. Okay. So we'll send it to Wendy.
It's just
There is an SMT distribution list on.
There is a list on.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Underscore DL senior management team.
Oh right. I still prefer to send it to. I prefer to send it to Wendy.
I'll tell you what to do. Let's have it by preference, but let's put send to Wendy and SMT. Okay, that covers off. Can you update the table accordingly, please? So that's what I'm going to draw your attention to on this one. Now, I find sometimes we spend more time in the meeting discussing the appearance of things than we should do, because it should be dealt with earlier. And that's why the meetings get long. Now, I can't go around and force you to do something, but if we can knock it into shape, right, it saves time in the meeting. Having said that, still things to be discussed, but it doesn't always be about the minor detail. Are we all clear on the deadline schedule?
I'm just slightly confused, Chair. I'm sorry to do that, but the last two columns is date to SMT CC to Chairman, and then the other one says final draft report to the Chairman by.
Exactly.
They're the wrong way round, aren't they? Because the dates, they should be in descending order.
Actually, you're probably right on that one. Yeah, we probably just need to move that column back one, Wendy. Yeah, it's a good point. And that's really because I would like to have a final look at it once it's all been round. So you get the feedback of the SMT, you make your amends, it comes back, and then that's also a final report to Chairman and Wendy, actually. See if we change that as well, Wendy. Great. Thank you.
So I am working towards this interim report to be ready on the 8th of the 11th.
Yeah, so let's work backwards so make sure you understand. So the 8th of November is when we have the meeting. Therefore, Wendy has to get the agenda out, all the information by the 31st of October. To make sure that's been... to make sure we have time to do any last final tidying up, etc., make sure it's all clear, Wendy needs that by the 24th of October, so literally 2 weeks before the meeting. I need to have seen it and had a good look at it and understood it and come back with any final challenges already. It's by the 19th of October. Don't forget, we also have our internal meeting with Wendy and Tony where we go through the agenda. And in order for you to get the feedback you need in order to get it to me by that point in time, you need to get it to the SMT 12 days before. That gives them time. So basically all you really need to know is actually worst cases, you need to get the document to Wendy and SMT a month after this meeting. That's all you have is a month. That's probably a better way to put it. All you have is 4 weeks to get it sorted. Otherwise, because it has ramifications. Now I remember when I first took over this committee, Councillor Randall used to say things don't get turned around in time enough. And actually I always used to say to her, it's not about whether it gets turned around. Our job is simply to get it through this committee, to get it on its way, and we've got the tracking for that. So please don't let us down by not having those data out. It needs to come through in the proper format and be logically and grammatically sound in order. So it's a proper report, professional people presenting the public on scrutiny. Does that make sense, everybody?
So do you want it on the 4th of October?
No.
It says on there.
It says on there, and the dates are on there. And Councillor Frenchman's right. The only misplaced column is the final draft report.
You said 4 weeks. It's the 4th of October.
Well, it's 7th of October. It's basically the 4th. But it's on the table. Okay. I couldn't make it any more simple than table. I thought it was Wendy's stroke.
I'll sort him out, Chair.
Please do. You're a clever man, remember?
You asked me to do a report on the 8th of the 11th. You will get a report on the 8th of the 11th. You've said now the 7th of October. That's fine.
No.
10th, not the 8th.
You have to work backwards because we have to get the papers in and tied up and all the rest of it. Yeah, basically, you want a paper in on the 8th of November, you have to get it to us by the first time it hits the SMT and Wendy is the 7th of October, 1 month before. It can't rock up a couple of days before in some kind of mess.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, sir. Right, I'm going to make the next one to resolve which portfolio and substitute portfolio order. Now, does anybody have any burning desires based upon what we discussed this evening to invite a specific portfolio order for the next meeting to discuss issues and to get them present to us? I can kick off, it helps because I wrote it down earlier. I think we should have a presentation on the green flag.
Oh, right, excellent.
And I think we said that's Councillor Hills, perhaps?
Joe.
Or Councillor Joe. Councillor Guildford.
It's Councillor Guildford, but I did offer to see if you can bring in Chris Warman from Rugby.
Yes, you did.
And you perhaps don't want both, I don't know.
I think possibly yes, both. Yeah. Yeah. Can we do that? Yeah. So, number one, we'll invite Councillor Guildford and Warman. But can you organise that for us?
But he's not a councillor.
I know he's not. Yeah, I appreciate it, Councillor. I've not met him when he works county. But he'll come in and do that for us, you think, if we ask him?
Yeah, I actually can't guarantee the day, but we'll certainly ask him.
Yeah. Well, it is that day. Well, it's either that day or the next one, but if we can go for that one. Wendy, could you see if you can organise that straight away, please? Thank you. That's number one. We always have a substitute in case we're quite developed on that particular day. Bear in mind, it'd be helpful if it's something on the agenda we've discussed tonight. Does anybody have any particular comments? Anybody they think we could interview, but also based on the performance we spoke about this evening? We don't have to have a substitute, but if we want to go for those, if they can't make it, then we don't have anybody. We don't have to have somebody. In fact, we've got a lot to get through as it is. We could conclude that we're going to have that, and if they don't come, we'll put it back on the agenda for the next meeting.
There's some clarity, Chair, if I might inquire. You've told me that the portfolio holder for the subject matter in question is Councillor Colin Paul.
For your particular topic area? Yeah.
Does that mean I have to consult him, or I don't have to?
It's I'm going to give a silence. It's inadvisable not to consult him.
I know it's advisable. I know it's advisable.
Well, why wouldn't you consult the portfolio order? I mean, it makes no sense not to.
You have a list of questions and you ask them.
And you keep any portfolio order on track with their answers. And you're a scrutiny, you have to focus them.
Yeah.
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it that we don't have any other burning desire to get anybody else in. We've all pretty full loaded on, but we've got a full agenda next time anyway. Let's take Councillor Guildford and Warman a group.
I was just going to suggest that if we're deferring item 7 from tonight's agenda, that possibly the next meeting shouldn't have a portfolio holder and we invite them to the meeting after.
Well, actually, I've already given that some thought because actually we're only going to take back next time a couple of scoping documents, and I don't know what sort of members feel about that. It's that time of night I can't make a decision on this.
I just wondered if that item 7 is actually quite a big item.
It's probably quite a big item, isn't it?
And it, we only do it once a quarter or whatever, so it's not too bad, but we don't want to be here forever.
No.
And if we've got an outside person as well, we have to show extra politeness.
Let's have a look. At the next meeting, do we have the performance update corporate plan? Because there's one in the cycle we don't have it. November, isn't it?
You will have Q2 by then.
We will have Q2. Okay, in that case. I think that's a good point. Let's defer it for the one after. But we can still plan for that now, actually.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's good because that guy could probably come.
Exactly.
In several months away.
Okay, well, we resolved to invite the persons in February. Could you still invite them, please, Wendy? And the next item on the agenda is training requirements. And are we duty bound to explore this on this one, or should we defer this one to the next meeting? We defer that, okay. Are we happy to defer item number 10 to the next meeting as well?
Yeah.
Wow. Right. By my reckoning, we have item 11, which is urgent business. Does anybody have any urgent business? Don't we have any urgent business, do we? In that case, then 9:30. That's pretty average, by the way, for case of Pritchard, if I'm honest. We usually finish based on. We don't meet every month, so we have a lot to get through. We've got to take this seriously. All right, in that case, then we conclude the meeting now. Thank you very much for your close. Thank you very much for your inputs. Great.